Hey friends, hope you're all doing well. We're doing okay too, just really tired since we've been working non-stop. We wanted to answer a question many of you ask: how does our publishing process work? Most of our audiobooks are first posted on Patreon as paid content. They stay behind a paywall for a few months. After that, they become free to access on Patreon forever. Then, a few weeks later, we upload them to other platforms like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, X. Lately, our community hasn't been growing much, and we could really use your help. Please share our site in your Facebook groups, Discord servers, Reddit threads, Twitter, X, or with any friends who might be interested. Every little bit helps and we really appreciate it. Thanks a lot for being with us and supporting what we do. Just beside her, there was an angel as big as a whole house. The newly arrived angel instantly darted to the sleeping angel and stood in front of him, shielding him from them, though considering the size, it didn't look like it, but the gesture was still there. Gabriel, after a few seconds, walked towards the newly arrived angel and tried to soothe its wariness. Calm down, little one, we bear no harm. She materialized her own holy energy and started leaking it out to help the angel and show it that she was also much like him, also an angel. And the reaction that she got was unexpected, to say the least. No, how? How do you have holy energy? It is impossible. The orb of light started trembling and vibrating like something significant was happening. I am his first creation, the first one. How? The orb screamed, the childish voice of the angel that looked like an orb echoing through the mountains. Gabriel's eyebrow fell down in the middle as she walked closer to it. What creation, little one? What do you mean by his first creation? The orb of light stops vibrating and shaking like a crackling storm as he turns to her, though considering that it has no eyes or face. It was just an institution. Are you trying to fool me? You are an angel like me, yet you were created before me, the first of his creation. How? Gabriel's frown deepens, and her footsteps halt in their places. Feeling deeply confused and not fully understanding what he meant. After all, they are all created by God, each and every one of them. No matter if they are personally created or born in nature. They are created because the heavenly system helped them take shape with the God gone, which in prospect meant that they were all created by only one being. So she tried to reason with the angel and help it understand. I don't exactly understand what you mean, but we are all created by one and the same being. So you do not have to be wary of me. Her voice was melodic and gentle, akin to the chirping of young birds before they became capable of flight. Orb of light. The orb of light felt like he was a fool. An utter and incompetent fool who couldn't even do basic reasoning that even flesh and blood animals should be capable of. He had lived for almost a few hours. Whole few hours. A time that should be plenty for him to realize why his everlasting mighty creator was so weak. While he wouldn't dare call him a weakling or something like that, as that would deepest level of blasphemy. But in the grand visions that he was so fortunately granted, he saw his creator doing things that any of the creatures that were beside him couldn't even begin to comprehend. He saw his creator laying waste to the world upon the world who refused his divine benevolence. He saw those heathens who dare call themselves the true gods crumble and fall like sand castles facing an ocean, incomparable and endless. He saw his creator with a wave of his hand, burning a very world until all that remains is dust. He saw his creator bending the very fabric of existence and erasing those conceptual beings. The beings that were believed to be immortal and undying until all signs of their existence, their history gone along with them. Not even their beloved spouse, the ones who swore an oath together, wouldn't even remember them. But he also saw his creator embracing those who joined him and placing the world that became one of his in his divine realm. A realm in which countless worlds and stars eternally danced in joy to his kindness and blessing that was granted to them. His creator possesses mountains upon mountains of treasures, each one a treasure that even the pathans of gods couldn't get their claws on. His creator possesses more power than any madman raving. His creator possesses more knowledge than even the book containing all existing and non-existent universes. And the thing that these creatures beside him could not even fathom the slightest bit. Except for that angel, since she was created earlier than him and quite possibly witnessed firsthand his divine miracles. But something must have happened that he was currently unaware of. Something major that the vision he was granted did not cover. A vision that foretold of his creator's fall and rebirth into a new being. He was the first creation of his creator in his current life. But in his past lives, he must have also created angels much like him. Yet this simple reasoning had just gone past his head and caused his creator to fall into danger. The orb of light turned to the devil, who stood farther away, expressionlessly. No, upon closer inspection, he could see a frown and how that devil woman's hand was twitching here and there. Possibly having realized that his great creator was alive and the assumption that he had fallen, had been false. A foolish tale that was woven into existence by the lesser beings that have never been granted a vision. No. The orb of light screamed as he walked towards the devil. His form rapidly shifted and changed as he cursed his incompetence and foolishness for failing to realize some simple thing and had pushed his creator, the Eternal One, into pits of fire. I will not let you dig your filthy claw upon my creator orb of light, though, as he flew to the angel, though not before muttering to the female angel. Protect the creator, for he is in deep sleep, Seraphol. Initially, Seraphol was just enjoying the chaos and the comedy that came from it. The newly arrived angel stopped in front of his elder brother to protect him from the big bad Gabriel. Cute. Trying to scream and intimidate them into backing off? Very cute. But the words that continued on removed her all laid-back approach. Specifically about how he was protecting his creator and that they shouldn't come near, etc. Those words got her serious and vigilant. As every word that spewed out of the newly arrived angel rang several different alarm bells in her head. And the bells that rang weren't of a mild nature, to say the least. She slowly inched closer to them and started talking with Gabriel. Gabriel-san, I change my mind. Until you deliver the resources, you won't take him away from here. Gabriel turned rapidly to her and narrowed her eyes. Her golden, mellow eyes lit up in warning. Leviathan, choose your words carefully. After all, nobody knows what would happen to the loved ones of the one who spoke without thinking. The holy energy that started gathering around the seraph was not something to joke about, as even she, one of them, felt extremely threatened by the extremely dense, akin to Mercury holy energy. Though considering that she was a seraph and how long she lived as a seraph, it made sense. But Seraphol wasn't afraid or intimidated by her, yet something and some part of her stopped her and begged for her to reconsider. Seraphol's steps slowed, and she stopped gathering her demonic energy as she stared at the seraph. Her eyes glowed in a blue icy tone, yet she did not walk further. She just stood. She wanted to stop her and forced her to leave as the words that spewed out of the little angel were not things that should be taken lightly. No, anything related to that one should not be taken lightly. Especially if it is related to his revival, as the moment he is revived, she is certain that the Great War will resume once again. But this time, there would be no apocalypse beast to weaken the god. The Ma'o part of her screamed at her to force and fight, while the simply Seraphol part begged for her to reconsider and cherish one of the last things that defined her existence itself. So Tanshi unconsciously muttered to herself. The standoff continued for almost a minute, their gaze not leaving each other for not even a millisecond as they looked at each other. She completely ignored the little orb of light that stood between them. A weak, pathetic bug, she would say. Her eyes turned more and more cold and slowly her demonic energy started gathering. Her feet, just like her demonic energy, started digging into the earth. Screech with a loud screech akin to a boulder grinding against a building, the sound of Seraphol grinding her teeth sounds as she finally decides to stand down. Okay, Gabriel-chan, don't be so serious, I was just kidding. Her hand pushed her head in a mock self-punching pose as she put her lip out of her mouth in a spoilt and pouting style, extremely similar to that one episode on Miracle Leviathan. But what just happened would not disappear just because of it. Gabriel, upon seeing her reaction, instantly teleported all of them away. While Seraphol just watched on passively, the slightest bit of ice in her eyes did not disappear. But in the end, she made her decision. I hope I did the correct thing. She whispered to herself as she turned around and walked towards the Kua school. Feeling a series of complex emotions such as anger, confusion, and deep frustration. Gabriel's emotion, much like her devil equivalent, was as complex as hers. She felt quite a range of emotions, but they were quite similar in nature. She felt confusion, frustration, and worry. Confused, if she did the right thing, while hoping that the words that the unknown angel had uttered had truth in them. If not, she quite possibly ruined the centuries of relationship that they had built. Worry. What she should do if she learned that the words the unknown angel had uttered were false and that the angel that was sleeping beside her was in fact not her creator, in prospect the god. She turned to the unknown angel and started asking him questions. Questions ranged from whether the words that he said were true and whether was he truly created by him. How long he had lived and when he was created. The questions were as relentless as the emotion that surged in her chest, yet the orb of light answered all of them truthfully and in pure honesty. After 20 minutes of relentless questions, she finally relents as she takes a step back. Her chest was heavy and filled with more questions than she initially started with. But she got all the questions that she could from him, though not much as he was just a newborn. Sister, I have a request. She heard the unknown angel say to her. She turned to the angel to see what request he had of her. Drop me somewhere into the human world. Preferably if I am far from other supernatural factions but not completely isolated. Why? She asked, wondering what he wanted and why he asked something like this. The orb didn't answer and didn't move after her question. He just stood there, the light dim and a silver of what it was initially. But he didn't make her wait long. For I had seen grayly, sister, I had ruined the Great One's plan and put him in danger. Unnecessary danger that was birthed from my foolishness. Gabriel opened her mouth to reassure him and stop him from venturing alone. But he did not relent. Please, sister, I must make up for my mistake. Only then, can I be in his presence once more. Gabriel stared at him for a profound deep second before she nodded at him reluctantly, although she wouldn't like him to venture alone like this. But she valued his loyalty and the willingness to make up for it. All right, she said. After which she materialized a teleportation circle and teleported him to a place she knew would be safe for him. A magical circle materializes around him. Thank you. The orb of light said as he prepared to make up for his undoing and make up for his mistake by annihilating the devil race as a whole. For that would be the only way to make up for his mistake. A thing that he didn't tell his sister because he assumed that she already knew. Chapter 32. With an ethereal, gentle glow, Gabriel and her angel brother, whom she now assumes to be her creator, arrive in the second heaven. Their landing was not a small one. At the moment her creator touched the ground shook, and a small part of the ground caved in, displaying just how heavy her father was. But otherwise, there wasn't much commotion. The light of the second heaven's sun instantly fell on her face as she gazed at the endless constellation and the stars that adorned the sky, each one bearing a tale that was forgotten in the past, yet despite the forgotten tale, the stars in their place stood quietly as a deep reminder to whoever gazed upon it. Right beneath the stars was an expansive field of wheat, one of which one would find in the human world, but the ones in this place were golden brown in color and were a magical plant. Crinkle crackle, the wheat gently waved and danced in joy to the tune of the wind as the giant artificial sun of the second heaven set. Nearby angels, some flying in the sky and some on the nearby building, all flew towards her, attracted by the sudden sound and the big thing that suddenly appeared. When they were about 10 meters away, most of them stopped, but not all of them, as two high-class angels came forth from among them. Lady Gabriel. They both said in unison as they bowed. Their eyes were blazing with light that was called respect as they gave their respect to their betters. Gabriel turned to them, smiled gently, and nodded. A gesture that spoke of her accepting their greeting. Lady Gabriel, who are they? A male high-class angel stepped forward towards her and asked her, his tone respectful yet happy, one that faintly resembled how a younger sibling of the family would call their elder sister. Treat them as guests, feed them, and relieve them of their exhaustion, but do keep an eye. Gabriel said, deciding to treat the ones who were together with her father well, even though any monster who intruded upon heaven would normally be mercilessly executed. A thing that was put into place by God in the ancient past, and one of the rules akin to a law that Turiel, her brother, venomously refuses to change, for he did not budge the slightest through millennia. But the ones accompanying her were a special case, a one in a million, one might even say, but despite this, they weren't allowed to roam free, as she also ordered them to be kept an eye on and to monitor their every movement. Both to ensure they didn't plot anything and for their own safety, as some radical angels might just attack them upon gazing at them. Understood. They both said in unison as they nodded and turned to Gale, Katu, and their bodyguards, who were looking around in confusion and happiness. As one should upon setting foot upon a place that, not many being other than angels and the dead souls of the followers, had set foot in. The high-class female angel stepped forward and gestured with her hand. Follow us, she said, her voice soft and melodic with not the slightest bit of disgust or frown visible in her face, for they were the guests of Lady Gabriel, one of the four great seraphs. Gale nodded politely while standing in the front, then followed behind the two high-class angels with her daughter and their bodyguard in tow. Gabriel waited a few seconds for them to walk a bit before turning to her brother, no, her father, the god. She walked towards him, her footsteps light yet bearing an unknown number of emotions as she embraced him. Her arm was stretched to the limit, and her forehead was touching the dome as she stood quietly. It is warm, she whispered to herself as she rested. Her restless mind, which was moments ago akin to a turbulent sea, for some unknown reason became as calm as a lazy lake as she reminisced about the ancient past. The ancient past in which she and her brothers and sisters were comforted and protected by him, the god. His back, at that time, always felt like it was as big as the very world itself as he shielded her and her brothers and sisters from harm and sins. Created a place akin to a paradise for them all in the hopes that they won't lack anything and won't stray from the path due to it. During that time, she, along with her brother Michael, always used to teach their newly created brothers and sisters the rules and their father's ideals that they must follow. Every day was a day of laughter and joy, and there was never a day without it. But when Lucifer Beelzebub, along with the rest, stuck a knife called a venomous betrayal upon his back with no other reason, other than pride, her father, the god, changed. Sometimes, in the endless nights that spanned endlessly like eternity, she sometimes wondered, would he have forgiven Lucifer and the rest if they had a valid enough reason? What if they said that they were fooled into thinking that he was about to destroy them, Or they had read a false prophecy that was created by one of their enemies. He might have forgiven them, as during that time, he was different. Soft and gentle. But no matter how much she thought about it, it was impossible, as the very existence of one of God's abilities denied every possibility of it. Omniscient. She thought in her mind. Nevertheless, the betrayal must have been very deep, as after that, God became more and more strict as time went by. The times he punished his children and condemned them became more and more frequent, and the number of angels who fell gradually increased as they fell in droves. When Adam and Eve, his children, much like angels, fell and were thrown out of the Garden of Eden, it only made it worse. Yet they, as the angels, did not give up, for he was their creator and their father, through the effort of her brother and sister, along with a new child that was created by him, named Jesus Christ. He, for just a few decades, seemed to, just maybe, get better. But when the humans killed his child, Jesus Christ, something seemed to snap within the deepest part of him as he decided to bring forth the judgment day, and only by the cries of his dying children did he barely manage to restrain himself. And through it all, Gabriel, along with her brother and sister, became a sorrowful witness to it all. When he fell, the world itself shook for days on end, and the destruction that was caused by his fall was one that she had never seen. But now he is back. Her dear father, whom she believed to be dead, is back. Not only that, but he is now not bound by the things called faith and devotion, for all the power that he has is only his own. She opens her eyes and looks towards her father. The gleaming, gentle sphere that hummed and radiated warmth lazily and gently. Her hand slowly brushed against the surface, and her hand caved in like it was touching a soft cloud. The edges of her mouth curved upwards as she turned around. Then she materialized a magical circle and teleported both of them to the sixth heaven. To show Michael that their father is alive and that he is back. Whoosh, with an ethereal light, she disappears from where she once stood, leaving only a gentle spark akin to a firefly's. Michael could be seen relaxing in his office while drinking his favorite drink, a chilled glass of sparkling water with a twist of lemon, while conversing with one of his brothers. Raphael, one of the four great seraphs. The content of their talk wasn't of much importance, as he had already received all the information that he needed from him in the written report a few hours ago. Did Camion get better? Michael inquired during the talk, asking about one of the younger angels if he had recovered from his wound. Raphael nodded. Yes, he did get better. I estimate that he will make a full recovery today or tomorrow. Michael sighs in relief and worry. I hope he stops with his blind experiment. He is only 300 years old and has yet to master even the Totem of Krif 4. You know how he is, even if we ban his experiment and try to stop him, he will just try to do it on his own in secret, alone. Michael nods in acknowledgement, for he is thinking the same. At least if they don't ban him, he will do it in the company of other angels, which is significantly safer both for himself and his surroundings. Though if he were younger than 60, Michael might have done more extensive moves. But fortunately or unfortunately, he was 300 years old, an age that is more than enough for any being to become a full-fledged adult in both body and mind. Also, the fact that Camion is a peak high class and the fact that he was doing experiments for the future of heaven might have played quite a big part in how Michael is handling him. Oh, I almost forgot, where did you send Gabri? Just before Raphael could finish his question, he suddenly sensed a being, specifically his sister along with another unknown angel, teleporting here. The holy energy that he is sensing from the angel that is accompanying his sister was one of which he had never sensed. Raphael turned to Michael with a calm face. Never mind, I understand now. Already, he understood what his sister had gone to do. His sister was probably sent to fetch one of their brothers, who was recently born, as the holy energy signature was one that he never sensed. While any normal being, upon seeing another being accompanying one of theirs, they wouldn't immediately make an assumption, same as him. But because the birth rate of angels was one of the lowest in the whole wide world and the fact that most, if not all, of the angels had been in heaven for centuries, most of them became extremely familiar with one another. Heck, he even knew every single one of his brothers and sisters' names and their looks along with their holy energy signature. While he was waiting for his sister to come, he started hearing some loud sounds, akin to a massive boulder falling up and down on a mountain, along with stone pavement and cement giving in and breaking. Each time it did, it only got louder and louder. Michael got up from his chair and walked towards the window, curious and confused as to what was happening. Yet when he got to the window, he saw his sister carrying a massive sphere, one that was filled with holy energy. He muttered, feeling confused as to why she was dragging that big thing here. He raised his hand and teleported himself a bit away from his sister to both satiate his curiosity and examine what she brought in detail. Whoosh, with a flash, he disappears and appears in front of his sister, who, upon seeing him, immediately stops in her tracks. Brother. He heard her shouting with joy, a natural and from the heart tone that he hadn't seen from his sister for a long time. "What happened, and why are you bringing this here?" Michael asked, one of his eyebrows raised and in a questioning tone. Gabriel's smile widened, and her eyes started shining in a blinding yellow light as she gestured to the massive dome. "You probably won't believe this, but he might be our father." His ear, upon hearing her words, at first refused to even register what she even said, for the words that his sister spoke of were things even he didn't even dream of in the thousands of years that he lived. But Michael was an angel, not just any angel. An archangel, a being akin to a high human among humans. One that was superior to a normal angel in every imaginable, possible way. So his ear and brain, despite refusing to even understand the words that she spoke, still recorded the words that she spoke very clearly. So his brain, following the will of his owner, started rapidly reviewing the words she spoke several times in milliseconds. Imprinting and hammering the words that his sister spoke of in perfect clarity. So he, despite initially refusing to even understand the words, in the end, finally understands. But accepting it is a whole other ordeal, as the only words that came out of his mouth were, "What?" From behind him, his brother Raphael, who just came out following him, also opened his mouth. "What?" After that, his sister started explaining how and what happened, etc., which, to be honest, wasn't much, as the moment she went there, Seraphol led her to him, and while they were conversing, another angel, one of whom was just recently created, came and informed her of him. Though not quietly, Seraphol, who was nearby, heard it but let her go without a fight. Probably because she and Lucifer's sister were nearby and would most definitely die as collateral damage if not evacuated immediately. "Brother, but I am not certain of the words spoken by the little one," Gabriel said after summarizing everything. Michael nodded. "Fret not, sister, a way to confirm if he truly is our father is simple." Gabriel turned to Michael, her head falling sideways with a big question mark on her head. "What would that be?" "Heavenly system," Michael said as he turned to Raphael, then back to Gabriel in confirmation if they should do it. Both Raphael and Gabriel nodded without hesitation. Michael, upon seeing their confirmation and agreement on what they should do, extended his hand, materialized a teleportation circle, and teleported them to the core area of the heavenly system. A system that functions as a replacement for God, though originally it was to enhance God's ability and ease his workload. With a blinding light, they appear below a giant flying island wholly made out of divine golden gear and mechanics. Each gear carried thousands upon thousands of magical circuits, each different and serving a greater purpose than alone. Tick 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 tock the gears moved slowly and relentlessly and without rest. Some wisp of divine light would seep in and out sometimes, and some parts of the whole system were working very slowly, some didn't even move. Showing how little of its full capacity is used, yet despite only working on this little capacity, there was quite some wear and tear. Some gears that were once golden and divine in color were degraded and decayed until they were orange-yellow, with the teeth of the gear bent or in disarray along with it. A sorry sight some might say, but Michael and the others, due to how complex and intricate it was, couldn't even repair or take care of it fully, as they are only capable of doing surface-level maintenance. But still, despite its somewhat fatigued appearance, it was without a doubt the greatest creation in the world. Michael stepped forward, his steps light and his wings vibrating in both anxiety and uncertainty, and extended his hand and put the massive dome in front of the machine. After which he materialized a bunch of magical formulas and started the process. "Heaven's core, please analyze him," he said, his voice crisp yet soft. With the sound of a gear rapidly turning, the heavenly system created a bunch of golden tendrils and started analyzing the thing in front of it. From the top to the bottom and then from right to left, it didn't even leave a single cell unturned as it tried to identify the creature in front of it. Heavenly system, Heaven's core, or commonly known as the heavenly system, was confused to say the least. The being that it was analyzing was both an angel and not, as some part of the being in front of him, about 1/5 of him, wasn't even a material or energy construct. Instead, it was closer to a concept than a material creation. And soul was a whole other ordeal. Some part of the soul was of unknown origin, one that wasn't native to this world, while some was of this world, specifically native to the underworld. The soul of the creature in front of him was a massive glowing yellow orb with a bunch of holes, each filled with souls of other hundreds of beings. At first glance it seemed like the small worm-like hundreds of souls seemed to be parasitizing him, but in reality it was the opposite, as the soul that was in the middle was sucking in their nutrition while also infecting and purifying them. All in all, the being it was analyzing was a complex creature that both seemed like an angel and not, while its soul looked like it came from the great beyond and not. So the heavenly system made a conclusion that it was an incomplete angel, who was born with a severe defect and used other creatures as a supplement to make up for what it lacked, and it possibly devoured some unknown soul that caused its soul to look like this, and it might also have something to do with the concept that inhabited its body. Just as it was about to deliver the message and finish the analysis, it suddenly sensed that some part of the divine energy that was sent to the angel, for some unknown reason, disappeared. And not only that, the divine energy that came back was different from what it was initially. While at first glance the changed divine energy looked and moved almost the same. The color of the new energy was a slight bit more yellowish, and the energy that came out was purer and more tame. Heavenly System started experimenting on the energy. It tried creating other constructs and made it do what normal divine energy does. Ranging from the effect it had on a normal angel, what it would do on a normal cleric, etc. The test continued for a long time, though not that long but still long for the greatest creation in the world. About 40 minutes, it took. And the result was a satisfying one, as the system discovered that while the energy became a bit less potent in terms of power, it gained a few properties it never had before. Any exorcist who uses the extremely diluted version of this energy instead of the normal extremely diluted version would be capable of displaying more power than their body or the artifact should be capable of. This energy has an anti-property that would try to purify anything that is not holy energy or divine energy. If not capable, it would destroy the said energy. This energy has a recovery effect on holy artifacts. It would mend and recover any broken or cracked artifact until all the divine energy is finished or the artifact is fully recovered. While the first two were an interesting concept to the Heavenly System, the last and the third one got the attention of the system the most. The system turned its attention to the current capability of its body. Working in 35% capability, possibly to increase it to 50% without the creator's input. Status: the Sacred Gear System, in need of maintenance. Several tens of artifacts connected to the system have been weakened, and several sacred gears are in severe need of maintenance to clear out their previous host's history. Holy Power Regulation System. Several areas of the system have deteriorated and decayed due to the passage of time. The Angel System, working normally. Divine Law Enforcement, deteriorated and decayed due to the passage of time. Heaven's Stability, part of which is responsible for the second heaven, has been destroyed, and the one from the third heaven is working overtime to make up. The one responsible for the first heaven is in severe need of maintenance. Then the system put more amounts of divine energy into the angel and extracted a bit less amount of divine energy than what was initially sent and applied all the divine energy that it gained around the parts in which its body severely needed. Then it put together a simple report and sent it to Archangel Michael. Michael, who was standing stiff for almost 40 or so minutes, finally saw a flash and a report appearing in front of him. The moment he got it, his sister Gabriel and his brother Raphael walked towards him and started reading together with him. An impolite gesture, one might say, but due to how much their heart was racing and how nervous they were, they decided to forget any politeness or personal space as they read together with him. The report was densely packed with words and diagrams that even they, ancient archangels, had to squint their eyes to understand. But after reading through it in a few seconds, they understood. The being that was analyzed was mostly angelic, with some parts of its body concept-like, specifically the concepts of creation, justice, and light. A thing that was good news is that stronger and higher life forms grew to be, the more they became akin to conception. And their creator, their father, had exactly the same ones as him. Though the concepts it had were weak and not so stable, like it was about to extinguish due to the blowing of wind for some reason. While the soul was a bit confusing part. It said that it possibly quietly lacked some part of its soul and is using other beings' souls as nutrition to make up for it. Though not by consuming it rawly, instead, it was cleansing and purifying the soul, then sucking in the nutrition to help its soul grow. When they read this part, all three archangels seemed to simultaneously take a deep sigh of relief and happiness as their bodies loosened and relaxed as they turned to the dome of their father. "Father," Michael whispered as he slowly took a step towards it, his steps shaky and unsteady despite his immense strength that could topple even the mountains without a problem. His breath was ragged and shallow despite not needing oxygen itself. "So you were alive," he whispered with small bits of tears accumulating beneath his eyes. Michael, although he didn't want to draw an empty framework, his brain refused and already drew a somewhat elementary picture. The moment he fell, their father, the god, must have been nothing but a wisp, akin to a firefly if one considers its capability he had in its peak as akin to a sun. He probably wasn't even capable of conjuring a normal thought in that state. He was probably only capable of drawing upon the basic instinct that he had and scraping off the remains of filthy animals for centuries upon centuries. Hiding from the lowest tier of animals and living inside a little hole, one that small animals like rats and rabbits used to live in. Barely scraping by and occasionally going into deep sleep due to how incomplete his soul became. Slowly he probably created himself a body from what he managed to save and started hunting for stronger beasts to continue the vicious cycle while also just barely sucking in the faint remnant of souls. And after many centuries of this kind of hell, He must have finally recovered enough to get normal thought processes and started devouring the souls of other beings to recover and using their physical bodies to create a better body for himself by drawing upon the knowledge that he managed to recover, instead of the instinct that he had, and finally, through relentless effort and pain, he must have managed to reach ultimate class, come to the human world to return to his home, heaven. Chapter 33. Within the halls of the castle of the Mao, faint tapping of shoes could be heard, echoing through its vast halls. The sound was distinct, and for some unknown reason, it felt heavy and sluggish. It was as if the tap was reflecting the mood of the shoe's owner, though it might be true, as the emotion that Seraphol was bearing in her chest was one of great magnitude and weight. Some maid or butler who saw her would immediately get away from her and kneel and submit as if their life depended on it, for the look that the Leviathan bore was one they had never seen before. Usually, among the four great Satans, the one that was most accommodating and approachable would be her, but this time, it was different. The Leviathan's eyes glowed with a faint blue light, and a deep frown, never before seen, was etched on her face. Her fist was half clenched, her teeth were gritted, not only that, but a flicker of demonic energy was dancing around her uncontrollably. Seraphol continued walking for a few minutes in absolute silence while she tried to think about what she had done, what she hadn't done when she should have. The glow in her eyes intensified and turned into a piercing blue light, and her breath turned rapid, as if the very air seemed to be disappearing. After a few more steps, she stopped in her tracks as she reached her destination. Zerst's Creamery, now better known as Zerst's Lucifer's office. She slowly raised her head and gazed upon the door, wishing that she could wait a few more minutes to clear her head. But she couldn't, not with that one alive. Tock tock tock, she knocked, extremely different from her normal self, as normally she would just teleport into Zerst's office without care. Though if there were any guests or other third parties, she, of course, would knock. Enter? An answer with a questioning tone greeted her, quite possibly because Zerst learned that she was knocking through his senses and was confused as to why she was doing something like this. A question that he would soon have an answer to. Zerst, he is back. She said it immediately upon entering without giving any greeting or using any fancy title. A thing that seemed to dissatisfy his wife and maid, Greyfire Lucifuge, who was standing nearby. After all, she is the silver-haired queen of annihilation, who views anything other than most perfection in etiquette as improper and undisciplined, though she did not show much other than slightly furrowed eyebrow. But Seraphol currently doesn't have the desire to deal with pleasantries. What? Who? Zerst's Lucifer asks, quite possibly not knowing who she was talking about. Seraphol walked a few steps towards him, matched her eyes with his, and repeated. The Tyrant of Heaven. Her voice, despite not being particularly loud or piercing, echoes through the office, sending the very air into stillness while also freezing Greyfire into a stone statue with not a single trace of earlier narrowed eyes visible to the greatest of sight. Zerst immediately stood up, his chair creaking against the floor as he turned to Seraphol. Eyes wide with disbelief and astonishment. How? He already died, just how? He asked her, but she didn't have much of an answer, as the things she knew were barely above what he already knew. But still, she would explain what she currently knew to him. Do you remember that angel that suddenly appeared in Ryas and Suna's territory? What? He yelled with his eyes widening and his legs leaving a deep crater due to the sudden release of demonic energy that he unconsciously made, possibly assuming the worst, that his dear sister might have died. But she reassured him a second later. Don't worry, they are currently safe, and I don't think heaven will do something drastic until he recovers. W.H. Huff, ahem, so it's true that he is an ultimate class, huh? Zerst said, trying to regain his composure that was lost due to the sudden news, feeling a bit relaxed and calmer upon hearing that his dear sister is safe and sound and that he wasn't at his peak yet. If that one were at his peak, Zerst's hand unconsciously tightened around his table as he imagined it. Then, after a few seconds of contemplation, though he turned to her, his eyes were still glowing red with destruction pulsing through them. Tell me everything, do not leave the slightest detail behind. Seraphol nods as she opens her mouth to explain, only to be interrupted by a Kajabizalbub, another Ma'o, specifically a Ma'o in charge of technology and science. He burst through the already opened door and rapidly started without going through any pleasantries, just like her. Zerst, you're not going to like this. Ajika said seriously. But as he stepped inside, he froze. The atmosphere in the room was far heavier than he'd expected. Heavy? No, oppressive would be a better word to describe it. What happened? Ajika asked, looking at both Seraphol and Zerst with one eye raised. Zerst turned to Seraphol, and she stared back at him for a few deep seconds before she turned to Ajika. The leader of heaven is back. She spoke, instantly freezing the body of Ajika Beelzebub and causing his already wide pupils to contract rapidly for a profound few seconds. A few seconds that the three mouse of the underworld spent in absolute silence. Soon, the only sound that was in the room was that of the wall clock, a big and ancient one that ticked quite loudly compared to its modern version. Tick-tock. The atmosphere inside the room, for some reason, became so heavy and dense that one could even pull out a knife and carve out a slice of heaviness from it. Serge and Serafal waiting for Ecchi to come to terms with it and to elaborate on the important information he brought. And it didn't take long, as in just a few seconds, with a deep sigh that vibrated through the room, he turned to them. "I don't know if the news I brought is worse or better, though possibly worse." He spoke as he walked towards a sofa and sat down. The moment he said it, the expression of both Serafal and Serge became grimmer than it already was, though no one knew how it could possibly be. Serafal walked towards a sofa that stood opposite him and sat down. "Tiamat sent a message to me about how she met some sort of angel who managed to restrict her movement and stun her before escaping out of the underworld." Ecchi shifted his gaze to Serge. "And she spoke that the angel might have something to do with." Ecchi leaned forward, his eyes lighting up in emerald green color and dripping with seriousness as he uttered. "Star gods." Instantly, when he said it, the already immensely heavy atmosphere, which was so thick that it could drown out a low-class magical being, upgraded to an unholy tier that was capable of drowning even a mid-class. Star gods, a term that refers to those monstrous, incomprehensible beings who live beyond the dimensional gap, in the true void where even the very fundamental concepts such as life and death, light and darkness are incomplete or destroyed beyond recognition. While the term star god wouldn't exactly describe them as they live in the true void, it is one of the safest terms that the creatures of this world have found. For they were to describe them in other ways, like characteristics, behavior, or the concepts that are closest to them, they might just notice them, for no creature, whether alive or dead, can understand them. After a few seconds of deep silence, Serge raised his head. "Are you sure?" Serge asked, his voice heavy and probing, asking how sure he was and how much the possibility was that Tiamat was just blowing things out of proportion. As the words that she uttered would be ones that would cause all of the supernatural factions, including all the pantheons of gods and leaders of races, to falter and waver in pure horror and panic. As the horrors from beyond the stars are beings that are easily capable of stirring the river of time itself until the timeline itself bends and warps until it is unrecognizable to even those closest to the concept of time itself and drowns the world in its blood until all that remains is one red pool. She would not utter those unless she was at least 80% sure? Ecchi answered. Instantly, the silence returns to the room as they try to fully digest the words that they just heard. For Serge, it would be that an angel that is somehow connected to the beings from the beyond is roaming free. For Ecchi, the leader of heaven and creator of angels, was back. And for Serafal, much like Serge, about how an angel that is connected to the ones from the beyond is out there somewhere. Ding with a ding, a light bulb pops up on Serafal's head as she turns to Ecchi. Was that angel a large spherical one with two large tendrils, no, two large wings that was burned? She asked, her voice probing yet for some reason confident in her own theory. Ecchi raised one of his eyebrows in response to her inquiry. How did you know? Instantly, Serge and Serafal connect the dots that the leader of heaven, who is now back, was in their backyard, specifically in the underworld, and that there is no two bad news. Just one bigger bad news, causing the bodies of Serge and Serafal to tense and soften repeatedly, not knowing what emotion they should be feeling, and whenever it was good news or bad news. Ecchi, however, was confused and didn't understand why they suddenly relaxed, as he hadn't heard about the angel that suddenly appeared in Ryas and Suna's territory, as he was busy during that time. Serge, as if understanding his confusion, replied. There was an angel that suddenly appeared in Ryas's territory, the fallen leader of heaven, and he is probably the one who appeared in Tiamat's territory. Ecchi, as if a light bulb had suddenly lit up, turned to them, his face turning a slight bit paler. Are you really sure that he is the one who appeared in Tiamat's territory? Though he asked about it, he silently willed his Kankara formula to find the chances of it being true, and the answer was, unfortunately, 89.487% for the two to be one single being. Yes, quite sure. Serge said, without saying anything about his friend's Kankara formula. Serge stayed for a few seconds, waiting for him to deny it or say the percentage. But Ecchi didn't say anything, cueing to Serge and Serafal that it is most likely true. So he got straight to business, which is for both Serafal and Ecchi to explain every single detail they know, though they should also invite Tiamat and discuss what they should do. Now that he thought about it, he almost forgot someone. Someone very important. Falbium Asmodeus, one of the four great Satans, a being just like them. After a brief discussion to outline the fundamentals, Serge informed his subordinates that he would be gone and wouldn't be available for at least a few hours, possibly not even returning today. Although he spent almost the entirety of a few minutes with his wife, who works as his maid, so should count her as being his subordinate. They then teleported to Falbium's office and discussed all the information they had and what they should do. Which, unfortunately, wasn't a lot. Heck, they even learned that Seraphal's information about that one returning from the dead was not so certain. Though they were quite sure of it, especially with the addition of him having been in the underworld previously, and that he managed to restrict Tiamat's movement, and escaped from Tiamat with not much trouble. So after an intense hour of discussion, they mostly determined what they would do. They would prepare the underworld for that one's return and reveal that he was alive to the pillars as soon as possible. A thing that would be done by all of them together, while silently leaking this information to the fallen angels. After all, his revival is a problem that would affect both devils and fallen angels equally, and they are quite sure that he would be quite pissed, if not furious, at them both. But they would not reveal anything about their speculation about his connection to the star gods. As this is not confirmed news, and if the news were to be true, well, they might as well spend their remaining time with their families. Huff. Ryaz exhaled as she stared at the chandelier that was hanging from the ceiling. Its many light bulbs that generated light on their own, acting akin to the many stars that would appear in the night sky, as she gazed at them absent-mindedly. Her eyes were weak with not much fire in them as a small part of her mind imagined herself becoming a baby factory to Riser Phoenix. Riser Jr. a child with features akin to Riser's sat on a chair before her as he enjoyed hedonistic acts that their father, Riser Phoenix, enjoys. "Mama, I want more booba," her children said as he fondled the boobs of a maid. His face, a perfect copy, was smirking at her as if enjoying her reaction while also enjoying the sensation that his arm sent to his brain. "No, you can't, honey, you already have enough booba." Ryaz imagined herself saying it to him while smiling tiredly at him. And the imagination Riser Jr. did not like it very much, just like how his father would, as he immediately got up upon hearing it and started screaming like she just cut off a limb or two from him. He screamed, his shrill voice vibrating through the mansion as he started crying like a little shit he is. And just a second later, Riser comes in with 100 or so other women in tow, acting like he is some big shit, even though her brother could, with a wave of his hand, disintegrate him until nothing, not even ash, remains. "Ryaz, why are you making him cry again?" he said, with a fake concerned expression, while he walked towards his child and started patting his back, comforting him. Meanwhile the other 100 or so Riser's bitches looked at her with judgmental gazes, gazes that whores like them should not have access to, for they are much worse than her. "Ryaz?" The imagination that occupied her mind popped like balloons as her queen Akano shook her shoulder, snapping her awake. Ryaz's head snapped to Akano, noting her also less than energetic expression as she concernedly examined her. Akano again opened her mouth. "Are you okay?" she asked, her eyes filled with worry. Ryaz motioned to her. "I am fine, Akano, I am perfectly fine." She spoke, but the words didn't have much drive, nor did they reassure her. Akano then looked at her for a few seconds before smiling. "Wanna go check if there are any possible peerage members in the city, one last time?" Her voice was soft and gentle, and Ryaz nodded upon hearing her question. Thinking that while the possibility of finding any talented human would probably be unlikely if not outright impossible, the walk should refresh her a bit. So they changed clothes and started circling the city, enjoying the quiet afternoon as she strolled. They even went to a few stalls and tasted a few candies here and there. The cool air of early February and Akano being her constant company as she tried to let go of her worries and enjoy herself for the briefest of moments. And it worked better than expected, as though the walk through that plagued her mind stopped and was shoved to the deepest part of her mind for the next few hours as they marched across the city. Enjoying themselves by gorging on appetizers such as cotton candy, sandwiches, cake, etc. They also played in the arcade that they came across, while also occasionally checking for any possible peerage member. The blowing cold wind caressed her as Ryaz glanced at Akano, who was humming a tune and following right beside her. Her smile was one of gentle warmth and care as Akano talked about the history of some shops and interesting facts to divert her attention. An act that she understood and appreciated deeply. Soon, the sun starts lowering as it starts to set, declaring the end of the day. And in just an hour or two, a few people would come and escort her to the underworld, specifically to her home. A time that she originally didn't have and asked Seraphal for, as Sona had already left for the underworld. A thing that seemed to worry Akano, as Ryaz was seeing her glance at her more and more frequently as the sun started to set. The yellow, mellow light of the sun was dyeing the city in a golden color as it declared its intent on sleeping. "Thank you, Akano, I appreciate it." Ryaz spoke to her suddenly, not only thanking her for today but also for putting up with her childishness and stupidity that no being should have to in the past few years. Always being a constant company to her and giving her enough confidence to do what she wished. For she believed that Akeno would be there just like always and stop her if she were to do something that counted as too much. The eyes of Akeno widen for a brief moment before an amused and slightly sadistic expression adorns her face. Foo, Kayaku, you don't have to confess to me in such a roundabout way. I will accept it regardless of whether it was direct or not. Ahem. She coughed in her mouth as her face turned red, while she turned her head to look sideways, trying to hide the blush that appeared on her cheek, despite her having no romantic interest in Akeno. A second later, her mind, thinking that looking elsewhere after being teased would look too humiliating and childish, decided to do something else. She took out the sacred gear device that she got from her brother as a roundabout excuse, one last time, and checked it. While this was happening, Akeno just looked at her with even more amusement evident in her eyes, and the glow in her eyes did not diminish, cueing Ryaz that she was about to open her mouth again and continue teasing her. Ding, when that sound sounded, both Akeno's and Ryaz's minds froze as they both looked at the device that detected a sacred gear nearby. Chapter 34 Heavenly System was capable of many, many things. Things that even the strongest of supernatural beings were incapable of in just a few hours or days, but there was one thing that it was incapable of, which is feeling genuine emotion or doing an action influenced by it, because his creator thought it was an unnecessary risk and liability without any advantage. A thing that the system both appreciates and dislikes. Dislike, because of the fact that it can't feel emotion, its predictions sometimes misses their mark, causing its plan or move to fail spectacularly, a flaw that it tried to fix in the ancient past, but for some reason, the result that it made after decades of study and experiment was so minimal that it didn't even notice any change in the decision it makes. Appreciative, because it prevents it from doing something as meaningless as crying or hesitating due to familial connection, just like its fellow creation before it always does. And the most striking and closest example it could find would be Archangel Michael and the rest of the seraphs, who stood near it. Most of them, if not all of them, had some accumulated minor tears in their eyes or were shaking in sheer happiness. Though it didn't know why, as system felt that it was missing something, a core piece of the puzzle. But the system in the end didn't interrupt them to ask questions, as through the studies that it had personally conducted, most, if not all, beings don't like being interrupted when they are exhibiting emotional overload. It saw Michael slowly caressing the incomplete angel it had just analyzed, then bowing before it while muttering, "Never again." Confusing the system to no end, but it led them to be, for it didn't see anything wrong with it. After 10 or so minutes of talk and other things, the system saw Archangel Michael wanting to take the incomplete angel away from it, instantly causing a deep sense of panic and alarm bells to ring in its body, as it still hasn't converted enough of those strange divine energies to recover its decayed parts. "Never again," Michael whispers for the second time today as his gaze lands upon his creator, Father. The one who, after millennia of disappearance, managed to come back to his home. Heaven. He wanted to talk about many things with him, count out all the problems that had plagued him for centuries, and the decaying church of his that he failed to preserve due to his incompetence, for it was corrupted by the vile claw of desires. But until he woke up from his slumber, he couldn't. Though he wasn't sure when he would wake up, he was sure it wouldn't be long, for their father wasn't one to make others wait. He reached out to him and prepared himself to carry him back to his realm, seventh heaven. Specifically to his throne, as Michael believes that the place his father should wake up must be on his throne. Not in here, not anywhere else. But before he could do it, Heaven's core stopped him, for it sent him a message, saying that it wanted to keep him here and that it had a severe need of it, and it could also monitor and take care of him much better. While the logic of the words the system used was without much flaw in them, the tone and the panicked tone it used confused Michael, as he was pretty sure that the system had no emotion or personality, as God thought that it was unnecessary. But shrugged it off as the system has been in existence for so many centuries that it gaining a slight sentience shouldn't be too strange. Though if his father hadn't just returned and the system hadn't just gained sentience, it would have caused severe panic and would have prevented him from falling asleep, but fortunately, his father is back, and soon he shall wake up from his slumber. "I understand," Michael said as he turned to gaze at the massive, island-like clockwork of gears and teeth that eternally spun. A totem, a mark that told all creatures how insignificant they were to the wonders that their father, God, could create. "You also miss him, huh?" And the message that the system sent to Michael only confirmed it, as it sent Michael a message saying, "Yes, I need it, and I need to spend about 28 hours, 14 minutes, 40 seconds with it. And you could take him away from here when the time came." Michael nodded while also glancing at his brother Raphael and sister Gabriel for their agreement. Raphael, with a stiff movement, nodded back at him, clearly not wanting to leave their father alone or leave him in this place. But also couldn't just take him away from here for nothing other than selfish reasons, as they all knew that the place that was safest and most optimal for him was here. With Heaven's core keeping constant watch on him, supplying him with divine energy or rare resources when he needed it, and protecting him from all harm. Though most of them were sure that no harm would reach him, after all, the 4 archangels and the whole of heaven would die before they let their Creator and Father fall again. Gabriel just nodded with that serene smile on her angelic face while she gazed at their Creator with tears of joy accumulated on the edge of her vision. So they teleported outside to prepare for what was left unfinished. A thing that stopped due to his fall and would begin again with his rise. Great War. After Michael and the rest left, only Moon and Heaven's Core remained. Heaven's Core, sending divine energy and collecting the strange divine energy every hour or so, then scattering it around its body to recover what it had lost to the river of time. Meanwhile, Moon was just lying there quietly, unconsciously sipping small bits of divine energy that bypassed him while letting the rest pass through. And each time divine energy passed through him, the glow that echoed through his body increased, so did the size of his body that was inside the dome. And soon, after a day and a half of time, his body fully reached the max size, for there was no room to grow in the dome. The system that was monitoring its increased capability in deep joy notes that the incomplete angel should soon hatch from its dome. But when it thought of the name, incomplete angel, the parts of the Heaven's Core that it put the paste on glowed in a platinum yellow color and then dimmed, the glowed repeatedly. Then suddenly the system felt that the term, incomplete angel, is too dirty and had disgusting meanings that it originally hadn't found flaws in. So the system changed the term that it addressed the angel into, unique angel. The parts that the system applied the strange divine energy to glowed again in defiance of the blasphemer, but because it still hadn't fully converted the system, so it could do nothing more than it already had. Then the system called forth Michael and informed him that, unique angel, would soon hatch. Instantly upon receiving his message, the system saw Michael leaving behind everything he was doing and called for the other seraphs while he was also flying to him. Michael, with a gentle thud, lands in front of his soon-to-hatch father. While the rest of the seraphs, specifically Gabriel, Uriel, and Raphael, land just a second after him. Showing that they themselves were waiting and were ready to move at a moment's notice, all of their eyes glued to the ground that their father was on with complex emotion of struggle, shame along with deep-seated happiness. Although they all wanted their father to hatch from his cocoon on his throne, surrounded by all of his children, they couldn't even risk even the slightest possibility of anything happening, for the compliance and carelessness is a sharp knife that would always strike when unnoticed. Brother, Uriel said as he turned to Michael, possibly asking a few questions as their father doesn't look like he will hatch that soon. Yes, brother. Michael nodded, spilling a small part of his concentration to his brother Uriel for the conversation that would soon take place. Uriel took another step, almost standing on the same line as him, showing through body movement that Michael should stop being their leader with their father back, while also using his mouth to explain another. Should I open the vault? Michael, in return, also made his move. He took a slight step back, now just a little in front of Uriel, showing to Uriel that he agreed with his thoughts and that he had no desire for the leadership of heaven, while also opening his mouth. Yes, I will appreciate it, but do not fully open it, we need our father's opinion. The crisp, pleasant voice of Michael said. The words that Michael said had several meanings, such as that they would fully commit to the war, not just initial preparation, and should prepare themselves, but they should do it in a subtle way so their father could change it as he sees fit, for their father might just have a plan he already prepared. And that he shouldn't inform the church of anything that is happening in heaven. A way of communication that all seraphs had with each other, though there was no need to, as there could never be another being, to be here in the sixth heaven, but because they all understood each other so much, the difference with using normal words or doing it in a bit complicated way didn't matter much to them, so they just did it in the shorter and just a bit better protected way, for there was no difference. Uriel nodded, agreeing with him and having found the answers that he wished to get. While the other two seraphs gazed at their father without spilling any of their attention, for they were fully committed to carving this moment into their brains. With not even a smallest of grain of sand left unnoticed. And in just a few minutes, they saw the thick golden dome thinning until the faint shadow of a being became visible. The giant sphere dome that was apparent in the golden light wavered as the being inside slowly moved. Its gigantic form, wreathing and spinning, moving gently and calmly as the one inside prepares to get out of its shell to reveal to the world what it was underneath. Bang, with a bang that was tens of times stronger than any flash bang that humans are capable of, the dome fully broke as the being inside hatched. The light was so intense that it was akin to gazing straight at the sun while standing right in front of it. The light should have easily blinded a low or mid-class being who was unfortunate enough to stand, but the ones who stood weren't low-class or mid-class, not even by a distant mile. Then slowly, little by little, their father became visible. Their father had 4 pairs of wings, massive translucent golden wings that gently hummed, as if every movement and every feather on that wing was a perfect work of art that declared to any being they were dealing with a higher being, a being that is in every possible cognitive way, better and more perfect? Then it was his sphere-like body, which had gears like golden teeth, that showed that their father, the one who died and revived, created his own body, following the blueprint of his greatest artifact, Heaven's Core. But unlike the Heaven's Core, his body had hundreds of eyes. Eyes that could never blink, for there was no need to, and several faces of beings he devoured along with them. Yes, faces of being, a mortal being's face who stared right back at them with an empty void expression. Those heads' eyes gazed back at Seraphs, as if noticing their movement. Seraphs became the slightest bit dizzy for reasons unknown to them. But they didn't care much about, for they already knew that their father initially used souls of other beings as nutrition to recover, so one or two unusual things are normal. But the thing that appeared next was the thing that made all of them freeze. They saw their father's eyes, a burning one that glowed in a golden reddish color while flames of great might surrounded it, protecting it from all harm, while the flame also sucked in the holy energy that plagued the air into itself, purified it, and feeding it to him. Picture suddenly, their father changed his form, transforming from a being that most, if not all, creatures that inhabit this world would call eldritch disaster into a monster in a humanoid form. He now had only one pair of massive golden wings that burned just like the flame they saw earlier, and a body that looked like all the skin that one should have was burned, and in its place, only muscle and tendons were visible with faint bones showing up. But he wasn't fleshly red or pink, instead, he was golden yellow, as if the flame that was his wings was compacted into a human form with no facial features such as a nose, ear, or lip visible. But there were eyes, one eye in his stomach and tens in the thick whirlwind that was his legs. Picture, and the first word that came out of their father's mouth was Michael, instantly jolting all of them, most of all Michael awake as they instantly took on a kneeling pose. A pose that they had taken only towards one being in ancient history that was their life. While they were silently kneeling, Michael, unknown to most, was secretly happy and glad that the one their father first called was him, not his brothers and sister, for it made him feel like the one closest to their father was him. But he shook himself out of it the next second as he felt ashamed of what he felt. As a being who had lived centuries upon centuries, he should be at least above such petty emotions, though the shame was only added on top of the happiness that was originally there, not disappearing nor shrinking. Then their father moved his head, looking at each one of the seraphs that was gathered, and started naming them. Gabriel, Uriel, Raphael. After naming each and every one of them, he turned his back to Michael, the eye that was in his stomach and the ones that were surrounding him boring down on him, bearing a weight that they shouldn't be capable of, considering that he was currently only at early ultimate class, discounting the fact that he is probably the strongest ultimate class as he has knowledge and wisdom of the strongest being in this world. No, the breath that was in his throat hitches as Michael sensed his father's energy through the sense that was granted to him. Their father wasn't an early ultimate, instead, he was peak ultimate, with only one step away from the seraph tier. Ma'o and Seraph are at the same level, Archangel is stronger than Seraph, Super Devil and Archangel are at the same level. Michael is equal to peak Seraph tier, with 1 foot inside the Archangel tier, and would reach the Archangel tier with the assistance of Heaven's Core. Where am I? Their father asked. Instantly, Michael answered him while still in his kneeling pose. Father, you are in heaven, the 6th heaven. His voice was calm yet barely containing the excitement that plagued his otherwise pleasant and beautiful voice. We found you on Earth, Japan, and brought you here. Their father, after hearing his answer, was quiet and silent for a few deep seconds. Seconds that spent longer than they thought, possibly, as it made all the seraphs that were gathered here get nervous, no matter the fact that they had lived centuries upon centuries and had been in more life and death battles more times than they could count, for they were in the end his children. And children, no matter how old they were, would always feel like a child in the presence of their father and parent. Where are the 2 goblins and a few beast men that were together with me? Their father asked, and this time, instead of Michael, it was Gabriel who answered his question. They are in the 1st heaven, father. Gabriel said, her pleasant and melodic voice echoing several times in the silent atmosphere. They are safe and sound, awaiting your will. Their father said. The tranquil and calm way he is talking made the seraphs that were present unknowingly relax as their once tense body that was ready for his endless fury softened as they listened closely. I don't remember. Their father said, but after the first 3 words, he became silent. Likely trying to remember or recall what he had forgotten, a thing that Michael understood. After all, their father still hasn't fully recovered his strength and form that he had once donned in the ancient past due to him, well, almost dying. On the other hand, if he were to remember everything fine and without a problem after his soul became something like this, it would be shocking to say the least. Don't worry, father, we understand that you haven't recovered fully. Raphael said, his eternally calm face had a light smile tugging on the edge of his face as he gazed at their father. But their father seemed to have other things to say. No. Their father said, His voice an eldritch combination of many voices, a side effect of his crude recovery path that he was forced to take. I have already recovered. And you all are mistaking me for another, he said, causing the silence that was already there to become even heavier and for the seraphs that had just recently relaxed to tense. Not knowing what he meant by that. I am not the person you are assuming me to be, he said, his eldritch voice blaring in some part as if some soul that wasn't already digested was screaming in agony, instantly tensing them, but they relaxed the next second as their wisdom and intelligence that they accumulated through the eons broke apart the meanings of the words that came out of their father's mouth. He was saying to them that he wasn't the original him, for the original him died in that war, on that accursed day where the sky rained blood, and the one that was standing before them was, while mostly him, but there was a certain part of him that was different, as he was forced to revive himself by a path that even the most wicked would hesitate. For the art of absorbing souls of other beings to revive oneself would cause one to change, influenced by the souls that one absorbed and changing them. But they, seraphs, didn't care. Because of the undeniable fact that he was their father, and that even if he changed, it would be so minimal that they wouldn't even notice, at least after he fully recovered and purified himself, that is. Until then, he will be different and changed. Even then, the change won't be too much, as their father didn't directly absorb souls, instead, he purified them and then absorbed them, causing the changes that should have been made to be at the very least, to be a minimum. Do not worry, father, we know, Michael said, his normally soft and pleasant voice bearing an immense weight that they rarely had. Their father turned his head to him although with no facial expression or evident moment that showed what he was feeling. But Michael could guess that he was probably observing him and judging if the words that came out of his mouth were genuine. One thing that he answered with his burning gaze, for there was no better answer than it. After a few seconds, he stopped looking at him and turned to each of the seraphs that were present, one by one, slowly and calmly, seemingly wanting to know the other's opinion. It matters not, father, Uriel said, and Raphael also continued just a second after him, as he noticed that their father turned his attention to him. You are our creator and father, and there is nothing that changes that fact. And finally Gabriel, who was gazing at him with longing in her eyes and a childish smile on her face. A face that never had accommodated similar emotion in centuries, with the most close one being her eternal serene smile. Father, you are our light and sun, the one who illuminates our path, so it matters not if the light is slightly red in color, for the light will illuminate our path is one and the same, she said. Their father asked again just a second after Gabriel, telling them that he is not who he once was and that he was different. And that time, they declared their willingness with even more fervor and loyalty that somewhat seemed to surprise even him as he gazed at each and every one of them for a very long time. And then with a siding motion that is unusually long, he leaned back, while materializing a chair to sit down as he gazed at them. Very well. Chapter 35 God's Throne, a throne that is akin to a symbol of absolute dominion over all of heaven and its subordinate factions. As the being who previously sat upon it was a being whose power reached the very ceiling of the world and whose knowledge was on a level that no other being, whether gods, devils, or dragons, could even begin to fathom. For that one was the one who laid the very foundation of magical craft and built the very roof over it, with no other contestant in the river of time even coming close to it. Though to the other faction that has an extensive network or extremely strong prophetic abilities, there is no previous being who sat upon it, for the original one had only come back. But to Moon, who sat upon the massive throne, it was nothing like what outside or even now angel subordinates assumed, as he was sure he was not God, nor was he in any way related to him. At least he thinks so, though he might be wrong, as the dream, or a mirage that he had while unconscious, had a being a bit similar to it. But through the unknown instinct that he now gained, he was pretty sure that the being he dreamed of and the biblical God of this world are entirely different beings. The one he dreamed of excluded an aura that compressed all creation, as if that being were a gigantic black hole that had existed from the beginning of time, unseen and inevitable, akin to how those living would one day die. For it did not matter if that being is an immortal or not, for death is a patient being. But through the remnant that is still left on the throne, the biblical God of this world should have been akin to a sun, a burning star that has burned from ancient times to now with seemingly endless energy, but there was still a distant limit because Moon's instinct told him so. Moon turned left to glance at Gabriel, who was standing beside the throne, along with a board and a chalk pack right beside her, as Gabriel was just recounting the events that happened while he was gone. Though she was only recounting the relationship of factions and some major events that happened in the supernatural world, as she was in charge of it for centuries upon centuries, while he was supposedly gone. Though he would have liked to take his time and learn what he could, step by step, without any sort of rush. But the information that Michael revealed forced him to go into a learning frenzy, as Michael said that the devils knew that he, the biblical God, was back. And other factions should know soon. So he, without even meeting anyone other than the 4 seraphs, went to the throne room, which is the 7th heaven, and started learning what he could, while giving each of the seraphs a certain time frame to give him reports, as he would like a certain viewpoint from the seraphs. After the first 12 hours with Michael recounting the events that happened in church and heaven, it was now Gabriel's turn. And he was already 8 hours into Gabriel's extremely detailed report that had a faint vibe of a lecture, though the tone and the words that she used were ones of great respect, and some small bits of nervousness were visible. It was as if he were a superior who was testing the abilities of his subordinate and was reviewing her past to determine if she did a good job or not. Though, despite this, he didn't know the exact reason why she even brought a chalk and board in the first place, as they could just use holy energy to draw on the air. Heck, she didn't even use it much, even though she brought it, as he could still see the diagram that she drew in the first hour. But after almost 20 hours of non-stop reporting, with 12 hours with Michael and 8 with Gabriel, along with using a few extra eyes to read several books that he had gotten from the library, Moon, despite his now inhumane brain capabilities, started feeling exhausted, though not due to physical exertion but mental, as he wasn't only recording the words that came out of Seraph's mouth and carving the words that the book he had read. Moon was also trying to piece together a whole picture, trying to weave a web of connection, cause, and effect through it. So after his mind started feeling sluggish and slow, he stopped Gabriel and rested for a long few minutes. Minutes that he needed, as Moon felt his brain and mind rapidly recovering from the knowledge that was stuffed inside while he was digesting what he had gained. Though random thoughts found their place in his mind, Moon unconsciously turned his head to look at the seraph who stood beside him. Gabriel, an angel of the highest tier and a seraph in charge of foreign relations, had a beautiful face that was akin to a masterpiece of the highest degree, frozen into a serene smile as she stood still, akin to a stone statue, with her breathing in and out only once every 30 or so seconds. One might even mistake her for an enigma that was mind-crafted into existence, for she felt too perfect to be real, too beautiful to exist. The only thing that showed that she was an angel and not a seemingly mirage that the mind created was the 12 massive wings that were behind her back and occasional nervousness when explaining some part that she probably assumed she had done something wrong. Yet, despite this, Moon was sure that the woman who stood beside him, now on his throne, was an ancient being who lived for a very, very long time. And following that, she should have at least a matching amount of intelligence and wisdom. At least Moon thinks so, but no, all of the seraphs were now assuming he was their creator, even though he clearly stated that he was not the biblical God, or any god for that matter. He even stated it twice, but they all just said they understood, and it did not matter, for he was still their father. Making Moon question their intelligence deeply. But after a few minutes of talk, he just gave up and accepted that he is now the biblical God. After all, seraphs assuming that he was God would only help him in his small goal of creating a perfect world. A perfect world with no sin, no pain, with everything dyed in the colors of white and yellow, as everything is pure and perfect? Although in reality, it wasn't entirely Seraph's fault, as Moon, although weak, had matching concepts that the biblical God once had, which are creation, justice, and light. And Moon's body also had a similar structure to the heaven's core, the God's greatest creation. Though the reason his similar body structure was all because heaven's core was continuously sending in divine energy while collecting the changed ones to paste it over its decayed part. And because the divine energy had been inside heaven's core for centuries, it gained a few of heaven's core characteristics, which transferred to Moon during his critical evolution. His form should have been quite a bit different, and his power lower if heaven's core did not just do that. Though even if Moon knew, he wouldn't have minded much. After all, his power level is peak ultimate, instead of low ultimate after all. Though he would have been a bit annoyed if the reason that he had faces of some of the beings he devoured in his true form was also because of that. He still felt some of them screaming in pain beneath his skin, though it was noticeably getting fewer and fewer. But Moon did not care. The divine energy that heaven's core had wasn't filtered enough, as it still had remnants of emotion and faith, and those emotions grabbed onto his form when he was evolving and prevented him from fully digesting the souls that were inside his body. As his body was forced to cleanse the emotions that came along with it. Gabriel, Moon said, calling out the name of the seraph who stood beside him. Gabriel, who heard his voice, turned to him with a question mark appearing on top of her head, looking for the reason her father had called her. Let's continue, Moon said, answering Gabriel's question. Gabriel nodded with a soft smile as she walked a bit further and continued from where she left off, which is what happened to heaven in the 15th century, about 2 centuries after his supposed death. During that time, the relationship with other factions was at all times low, as heaven was mostly blamed for the Great War, as father, as you have, technically created all 3 factions. and the fallen angels and devils have been seen as a revolting branch of heaven to the other old supernatural factions because of their recent creation, so they heavily suppressed us. Gabriel explained, stopping at some parts to look at her father, though because he didn't have any expression or even skin for that matter, it was extremely difficult to gauge his mood or the face he was making, but nevertheless, she continued, though a bit nervous, as she was pretty sure that he was furious beyond reason, with only a paper-thin thing called patience being the only barrier. And during that time, we were almost finished purging all the spawns of that witch, Crimson Lily. The one who had a hand in your death. Gabriel gazed at her father closely as she told him the good news to see if he was happy that they had managed to finish off one of the main beings who had a hand in his almost death. But she couldn't see anything, so she continued with a bit of a slumped shoulder, not knowing if the good news was buried under the disappointment he probably felt towards them, specifically about the fact that they lost most of the authority and influence that they once had. But still, she would continue. After we finished off the last remnant of that witch's clan and family, the next 50 or so years we spent trying to protect what we had while also trying to restore the relationship that had worsened due to the sudden expansion we had before the Great War. She said, trying to soften the words that she was using. As she didn't want him to be angry. As the original relationship they had with other supernatural factions in ancient times had worsened or flipped into a hostility due to the rapid expansion that heaven had made just a few decades before the Great War. But during that time, they didn't care much. After all, they were the strongest faction in the world during that time. Not even counting the fact that they were still growing rapidly during that time, with all of the things that her father was creating. Namely, Heaven's core, sacred gears, and the divine kingdom of her father, Heaven. Still, she continued explaining, revealing the secrets that Heaven would normally guard with the highest priority without care. After all, why would she? And during the continuous report, her father would ask questions every few sentences to clarify some part or to confirm if the theory that he had created in his brain was true. And unsurprisingly, most of them hit right on the mark, just like how it should be. 9th hour, 10th hour, 11th hour. After 11 hours of continuous reports, Gabriel left. As she had revealed all that she could in the small time frame that she was given. And other unimportant events are recorded in the library. After that, it was Uriel, a seraph in charge of the military and combat aspect of Heaven. The report that he presented was at first slow, and each word was possibly thought out with great thinking, possibly trying to sound respectful but without making it sound awkward, akin to a brute and cold soldier trying to use normal speech, but he soon got the hang of it and started reporting like normal. Then it was Raphael, a seraph in charge of research, healing, and system maintenance. At last, all of the seraphs gave him the brief history of Heaven, though calling it brief would be an understatement, as in total, he spent 2.5 days in continued study and contemplation, with even the seraphs getting tired in the last hour or so, though probably not because of physical exertion but due to mental, as they are probably going through an extreme roller coaster of emotions, considering that their long-dead father had come back and met them. Moon turned to Raphael, who was standing beside him, having just finished his own report and awaiting his order. An order he shall give. Call all of the seraphs. Moon said, while turning the part that should have been his head to Raphael. Though there was no feature like a mouth, nose, ear, or even skin on it. Raphael bowed deeply in response to his command. Yes, father. These words came out, and he disappeared into a gentle light akin to a firefly. And just a few minutes after, all of the seraphs came and kneeled before him. Their 12 wings were in full display as they kneeled in absolute silence. Moon felt some sort of emotion stir inside his chest upon the sight. An emotion that seemed to touch just beneath the surface. So close and familiar, yet Moon forgot what that emotion was called or why it was throbbing in his chest in the first place, so he let it be. Michael, after a few seconds of silence, raised his head. Father, why have you called us? He asked, his voice pleasant and flowing like a stirring river. I have called all of you here because... Moon said, his voice, now more tame than just after hatch but still having the deep, distorted tone, continued. I have made my decision on what I wish to do. All of the seraphs, in response to his words, raised their heads and looked on at him with curiosity and faint fanaticism on their finely crafted features. An emotion that intrigued Moon a bit, as he felt some emotion that he remembered as curiosity stir in his heart in response. Would they betray him if they learned of his true goal? Would they become fallen? Or will they not fall because they are trying to protect the interest and well-being of the whole instead of him? Would the loyalty that he was seeing before him crumble like a sandcastle before a tide, or would it endure like it had for the centuries that it had? Possibly yes, might be no, who knows? After all, no being could very possibly know the absolute future in this world. If they did, the information of what he planned on should have already spread, but no, there is no such rumor. Instead, There were only rumors of war that might happen because of the supposedly revived biblical God, who is, fortunately or unfortunately, him. The mere whispers of his revival caused the supernatural world to turn grimmer and darker, with crimes and power struggles within factions increasing considerably in response. Though at least from what he heard. And in a few days he expects representatives or messengers of various factions to come to him to inquire what he plans to do and declare their allegiance or their desire to remain neutral, though unless they are mighty gods or paragons of races, they won't even go past the fifth heaven, much less meet him. Moon's mind, a lattice of churning void, returned to the now. The eyes dozens, scattered across his form like stars in a corpse-colored sky flared open with a distorted light. The fires of war shall burn again, he declared, but this time, it will be final. Moon declared, his voice impacting the very air surrounding him, distorting it as it screamed in agony and pain while seraphs looked on in some part calm acceptance yet still a bit of surprise. Even though they all expected this kind of response from their father. But the next words that were declared swept away any remnant of stability they had. Either my will extends its reach around the world, or I die trying. Their holy energy blaring uncontrollably as they looked on with wide eyes, their pulse beating madly and their pupils contracting without stopping. As they looked on. Though any lesser being might have missed the reveal that happened. But they, as the seraphs, knew it as clearly as day. Their father doesn't just want to cleanse the fallen and devils, he also wants to extend his reach to the whole wide world, with no living being, not even in the deepest reaches of the world, left untouched. As the only way for a god to extend their will around their world is for there to be none to oppose them. Michael opened his mouth to say something but stopped himself at the last second as he, just like the other seraphs, simultaneously stayed quiet. Waiting for him to finish. So, the Great War, no, Great Crusade, shall begin, though to devils and fallen first. He said, his voice calm yet pulsing with power. And that word seemed to relax them a bit as their rigid body just slightly loosened and their expression stopped being as stiff as before. As they realized that their father hadn't been blinded by rage to the point he would declare war upon the whole world. Michael. Moon said as he called out Michael's name, motioning him to pay extra attention and to also jolt all of the seraphs to awaken from their thoughts that rapidly spun in their minds. Weaving a web of cause and effect that most in their position would. Yes, father. Michael said. Bring me the souls of them all. Moon said he focused all the dozens of his eyes on Michael, their unblinking and indifferent gaze boring down on the frail shoulder of the feminine archangel. Inquisitors, Knights of the Cross, witch hunters, holy knights, all of them, do not leave a single one of them. Even those who were not worthy to be in heaven but yet too loyal to be discarded. Michael, with a confused expression, turned to his father, one of his eyebrows raised, and confusion adorned the feminine face of the archangel. Why, father, if I may know? To create you all, new brothers and sisters. Chapter 36. Wind blew fiercely on the vast sky of the sixth heaven as a being who, from a normal supernatural being's perspective, looked like a darting mirage that was quite possibly mind-crafted into existence, traveling at a speed that many mortals would assume to be the speed of light. Misinformation, Michael did not use that much speed. However, due to his exceptional strength and abilities, it appeared that way. And within a minute or two, he arrived at his destination, which is, Heaven's core. There in the distance, a massive flying island, like a clockwork of wonder, spun lazily and calmly. An enigma or a natural wonder, a mortal might assume, and they aren't further from the truth if one considers gods as a force of nature. Within a few seconds, he came into the distance that he needed and landed with a soft thud. A thud that was barely audible to normal human ears, a disappointing landing, one might say, but Michael saw no need for flares and things like that in a mundane action such as going from one place to another. Then he raised his hand and sent a request to the system, asking it to send all the souls it had to the seventh heaven, as he couldn't exactly command it, since only his father could, and he hadn't regained full control over the system yet. Why did he not regain control? A low-tier angel might ask due to their ignorance. And Michael would answer him that their father in the ancient past had planted traps and countermeasures in the system, like putting stars in the sky, seemingly endless in number and ways, to prevent anything or anyone from even stealing the slightest bit of control over it. An extremely paranoid motion, one might say, and Michael, while he won't voice it out loud, would agree in his heart. But in defense of his father, Michael would say that father wasn't exactly in a calmish state of mind. But still, despite the countermeasures that were put in place, the system seemed to sense its creator, as it placed their father in the high value and valuable part of the angel echelon, even though he should have been of much lower value as a new angel with high risk and with only his high strength being the only backbone. Since he didn't even have a minimal amount of control over it. However, he expects his father to regain control bit by bit soon enough. He won't put it past his father that he might just regain full control a week from now. as he expects 1 or 2 backdoors from his father. Finally, after a few seconds, Heaven's core glows in response, indicating that it understood and would start doing it soon enough. As he saw that it had started, he turned around and flew back to his father, as he wished to see him creating a new brother or sister with his own 2 eyes. Moon sat calmly on the throne as he waited for Michael to start sending in the souls. Before him, Seraph kneeled. Their breath was quiet, and their body and face were stoic and akin to a stone as they waited quietly. In the past, before he became what he was today, he would have ordered them to stand up or sit on the couch or something as a polite gesture, at least trying to win them over or just making it less awkward for the human him. But unfortunately for the Seraph and the human him, he had changed. Them sitting before him or kneeling did not matter to both him and Seraphs, as their sheer physical capability made them capable of kneeling like this for weeks on end, akin to light work. But them kneeling would bring him more good than sitting, as it was a thing that was according to the behavior of the biblical God, a welcoming thing since he decided to impersonate the biblical God. And when impersonating, he wants every little detail to count, and he just hopes that Seraphs will assume the slip-ups that he made are changes he had during the years he was gone. In other words, making them sit would move them emotionally a bit, but it might also plant a seed of doubt, though now that he thought about it, he wasn't even sure if they weren't even planted already considering their age and the wisdom that they should have accumulated. Though even if it is already there, it won't matter much, as long as those seeds haven't bloomed. As long as they hadn't, they would follow his orders to the very last letter without any defiance as if he was their father after all. Though unknown to him, due to their nature as an angel and how they generally view things, fortunately for Moon, there wasn't any seed of doubt in their heart. So, he just sat on the throne, his gaze boring down on the shoulders of his now subordinate Snow, his children as he silently analyzed and inspected their bodies and their holy energy while he waited. Their body was immensely dense compared to what a normal being should be, yet they were also not heavy nor complexly crafted to accommodate their dense body. Their holy energy was fluid and mighty compared to the magical energy that Thunder Rabbit had. It was akin to comparing water vapor to ice, utterly incomparable in both quality and quantity. Even now, Moon felt that each of the Seraphs was capable of killing multiple of him without much trouble. Yet, as if in mockery of how this world works, they were kneeling before him in such a loyal and fanatic way. What a fascinating world we live in. Moon muttered in the absolute quietness of the world around him. And the Seraphs seemed to hear him as clear as day as he saw their eyes shift and their breath becoming slightly faster. Fortunately for the Seraphs, this hard way didn't last long as souls of beings start to appear beside Moon. Thousands upon thousands of glass orbs that had a gray, smoke-like thing in the center clink to the ground as they pile up around them. Moon, upon seeing the sight, extends his morbid and skinless hand and starts absorbing them. When absorbing, Moon notices a few slight differences, like the usual voice they made as they were absorbed, which was screaming, begging, or wailing, wasn't present. They didn't even make any sound, even when they were absorbed into his body and became one with him. So it continued. With one side, Moon absorbing the souls, and from the other, the Heaven's core, sending them to him continuously and in a constant stream. Moon's skinless body slowly enlarges as his already tall height of 2.5 meters increases little by little. And thankfully, the throne seemed to notice it and also grew larger in response to his bigger frame. 2.62 meters, 2.86 meters, 3.2 meters, and Moon's body's muscles bulge akin to a bursting balloon in response, and his muscles contract and coil like a snake under the gaze of his now children. Moon saw their eyes widening, breath hitching upon the sight, but they did not say anything. And just like that, it continued. But fortunately or unfortunately, just as Moon's body reached 4 meters, a height that was towering over most beings in the world, he stopped. As he felt like he had reached his limit and shouldn't absorb more if not forced. If forced, he felt like he would injure himself. A fruitless act that would only do harm. Then he extended his hand and tried to follow the faint instinct he now had to create an angel. From his extended hand, a diagram and formula like no other appeared before him. It was glowing and pulsing like it was alive, and one could faintly hear the echoes of long-dead mad zealots whose throats had been torn by their own devotion, screaming in delight from within the diagram. Their voices numbered in the thousands, but their devotion and will exceeded millions as they wailed in happiness. The diagram or formula moved as if alive, and for some unknown reason, it was madly changing shape every second. As if a mad prophet was reciting a forgotten book from the forgotten era. Word after word, text after text, Moon himself could barely capture the words that were changing every second. While this was happening, Michael, who recently came, and the rest of the Seraph just kneeled there, gobsmacked and confused upon the magical circle that they had never witnessed before. Their mighty body that could endure mountains throwing upon them unknowingly shifts in discomfort as it sends their owner a signal. A signal that said it wants to leave and doesn't want to be anywhere here, especially from that diagram. But their brain, one of their most prized organs that identified them second only to their soul, whispered that it wanted to stay there and just continue watching. A thing that Moon completely ignored as he was focusing all his attention on the creation of the angel. And fortunately for him, there was already a diagram of an angel in his mind and instinct, as he was pretty sure that he wouldn't even understand 1/10 of the diagram that he was manifesting in the air before him. And to add a cherry on top, it allows Moon to manipulate and make considerable changes to his creation. With a resounding boom, everything was dyed in a color of white. In the dark void that is his mind, he waited. And he waited. For there is nothing he could do other than wait. Sometimes, flashbacks of his life would bypass through his eyes like a short story. An old and decayed story about his glory, about his accomplishment and the authority and strength he once wielded, but they would just as quickly disappear when part of him realized that he was hallucinating. Causing him a great amount of annoyance, yet he could do nothing but wait in the eternal darkness that has become his home. He once screamed or fought in defiance in the darkness that became his afterlife, for he felt profound betrayal at the fact that he doesn't have a place in heaven despite his lifetime of loyalty. Yet, it was as futile as a branch falling on the ocean. Nothing he does, nothing he thinks, would change the torture that became his afterlife. Now, he is just a numb, decaying soul who was forgetting who he once was in the endless darkness. But suddenly, something changed. No longer was he in the oh-so-familiar darkness that was his only company. Instead, he was now on an endlessly tall, vast mountain that he even mistook for a pillar to heaven. Under a clear blue sky that spanned to the limit. The fierce and cold wind of the mountain rapidly enters his lung as he chokes in confusion. His eyes shook and his body quivered as his brain tried to process the long-forgotten sensation that it thought it had lost. He tried to move his hand, yet it felt foreign. He felt like he had just grown a tail and was trying to control it for the first time. Yet, he also felt himself rapidly recovering as his shaking hand stopped and his labored breath that was comparable to a dying man's calmed down as he waited for himself to recover. On the flat top of the mountain, he saw several others just like him. Confused and shocked at what they are feeling. He tried to stand up on his feet to get closer to another just like him. His legs were shaky, but he felt better after sitting for a bit. Clank screech clank. Hearing the distinct sound, he looked down and noticed that he was wearing a pristine white armor. An extremely familiar one, as the one he wore when he was alive was just like this one. His mind trailed across his distinct armor that had the carving of angels as his eyes, unknown to him, inspected the armor that he wore, and from the corner of his vision, he saw his long-forgotten partner. His sword. Cavalier, a light, double-edged sword that is hanging from his hand. His hand, unknown even to him, reaches out and grabs the handle of the blade, then pulls it out. And with a short sheathing that is also familiar to him, he drew his sword and pointed it to the sun in the sky. His once blanked out and unfocused eye slowly regains the sharp edge it once had as he cleaves his sword several times. The sword cut through the air, akin to a light. It was glowing akin to the greatest of light, sun, as it dyed the world around him in the color of white. And when his eyes crossed around the arena, he noticed that most of the people here had also regained their focus and were standing just like him. Though there were several others who was themselves cradling or even crying while screaming in fear. But he, pure light, Hans von Villiers, did not care. Though the fact that he was here in this place together with such inferior beings annoyed him, nevertheless, for now, they shall live, as he needs information first. Though after he got enough information, he wouldn't mind cutting down all of them. As their sheer presence dragged the title of a holy knight through the mud, judging by what they wore, he saw one of the knights, quite strong and fierce-looking by his standard, coming towards him. "Greetings, Sir Knight, do you happen to know the reason we are here?" the man asked. His tone is strong-willed and direct, a person that is to Hans's liking, so he entertained him. "No, I do not, Sir Knight. As I have awakened at the same time as you." The man nodded, without much care, as if he did not care. And Hans understood him. The man before him just wanted some way to start the conversation without anything too drastic. An approach that he was also thinking of. After all, in an unknown place, why should a man offend another considerably strong man, especially when there is nothing to be gained? Though he wouldn't have this kind of thought process if some weakling or some witches showed up in front of him. As he would most likely attack her or him without hesitation, not even caring if they are enemy or not. Suddenly, with a large swish, a large portal that he has never seen opens in the sky, and from it, an angel like no other appears. The angel was a massive, 10 hill tall and 3 hill wide being with 12 wings extending from its neck. Seraph? Who was he? Is it Seraph Uriel or Seraph Raphael? He asked himself, but unfortunately he couldn't find the answer to this question, as the massive being was fully covered in a white cloth, blocking its features from view. Then Hans saw the angel materialize a massive sword and hit the ground in a calm motion. Instantly, The whole mountain shook in agony and in pain as he created a massive pit in the middle of the arena with no end in sight. The pit was 100 meters in diameter, and the edges were sharp and without any cracks. "What strength," the man beside Hans muttered, and he agreed with him. As the being before him did not use any sort of holy energy to create this act of force of nature, nor did he put in much strength. Yet he created a crater that he never thought possible so easily. "Only one shall remain," the angel mutters as it floats in the sky. Well, normally, when he heard words like this, he would have been confused or baffled at what they meant. But for reasons unknown to him, he instantly understood that only one of them would ascend to the higher realm while the rest would become nutrition for the winner and disappear from this world in both soul and mind. A deep frown adorns his face, and the hand that is clutching his sword tightens until his veins pulse in rhythm. The slight friendly relationship that Hans had with the man beside him shifts as Hans swings his sword towards the man beside him. From his mouth a mighty battle cry sounds, and his sword cleaves through the sky as it cleaves towards the man who stood beside Hans. Uriel, Uriel, a word that has the meaning of fire of God, in other words, the fury and power of God. At least that was what Uriel liked to think of himself. As despite himself declaring that, his life history and accomplishment were akin to a book riddled with failure upon failure. He first let Lucifer's ambition burn right on the edge of his vision without notice, as during that time, he was foolishly collecting information and knowledge that he thought they needed from their rival factions. Some of his subordinates might protect him using fake words like, in ancient times, the very concept of betrayal hadn't been created inside heaven. So it wasn't Seraph Uriel's fault. But Uriel can see clearly, it was his fault, as he was together with Lucifer more times than Michael and the rest. Then, he let humans kill one of his brothers and the only human child their father doted on heavily except for Adam and Eve. Jesus Christ! What an absolute failure he was, Uriel would silently think of himself. As he had the means and even a faint thought of helping Jesus just a year or two before his eventual demise at the hands of those filth. Yet he did not, for he was a failure. But the biggest failure that declared him a true failure was the fact that he let his father die, no, almost die. And to add insult to injury, he was just tens of kilometers away from him. But just like the failure he was, he let some devil stop him and slow him down enough that by the time he came to him, his father had already died. But no longer will he be the Uriel the failure. Uriel thought as he silently watched the diagrams that his father was weaving into existence. The diagram and formula that were used were beyond his knowledge, just like always, and how he was dissecting the souls and blending them was a work of art like no other. And the thing that even captivated all of the seraphs as he saw those souls combining and giving way to each other, and all of them, using their free will, they were slicing apart the unneeded parts of themselves and converting them to enhance the better parts of themselves selflessly. It was an art like no other, at least according to his thinking, as he wasn't exactly that good with art and the creation aspect. But the looks that his brother and sister gave to their fathercraft are all he needed to confirm that it was. Were we created like this? A thought appears in Uriel's brain, but he squashes it the next second as the knowledge that was buried under centuries of knowledge surfaces and makes him remember how they were created. They were created just like the rest of his brothers and sister, weaved into existence by their father. Molded and took shape following their father's will. And the possible reason he is using the souls of other beings to create angels is probably because his current strength was insufficient. While peak ultimate would be a higher echelon in all factions in the world. But to the true top-tier beings in the world, they were nothing but just troublesome kids. Although he doesn't want to think about it, but he is sure he could defeat his father now. Then it was a blinding flash that caused even Uriel to narrow his eyes unconsciously. And when the blinding flash receded, he saw his new brother. The new brother of his was gigantic, with a height reaching 2.2 meters, just 30 centimeters shorter than their now father's height. His new brother stood at 2.2 meters, an imposing height that might have been impressive, but to Uriel, it felt more like a looming presence. Just 30 centimeters shorter than their father, yet Uriel couldn't help but feel something unnatural in the air around him. The pale gold skin of his brother seemed almost sickly, radiating an eerie glow, like the soft light of a dying star. His platinum white hair cascaded in unnatural waves, strands of gold flickering in the dim light as if they were alive. But it was his golden eyes that struck Uriel to his core, calm, precise, yet devoid of warmth. There was a sharpness in those eyes that spoke not of power alone, but of a fanatical conviction, a blood-tinged madness that lurked just beneath the surface. Uriel's gaze involuntarily lingered, and for a fleeting moment, a shiver crawled up his spine. It was an unhealthy obsession and unsettling devotion that almost made Uriel's heart skip. His brother's wings, a total of 8 pairs, extended behind him. They were delicate, intricate, almost fragile to the eye, a reminder of his ultimate class status. But even with that beauty, there was something wrong in the way they moved, as if they weren't entirely his to control. Uriel's instinct screamed that his brother wasn't simply strong for his tier. No, There was something more, something off, almost as if his power was twisted, unnatural. His brother wore deep-seated golden armor, the surface reflecting the light in jagged patterns. Beneath, a celestial robe clung to him with an unsettling elegance. The aura that surrounded him wasn't just one of strength, it was suffused with a dark loyalty, a madness so profound it made him question if even his loyalty was weaker than him. Moon unconsciously made a motion of exhale as he felt most of his holy energy disappear, and along with a few wisps of his soul, a pitiful amount that could be recovered within a week or two, yet the pain lingered, along with a phantom ache where the wisp had been only moments before. But the result was worth it as he saw his first creation, no, his second creation. He was a mid-ultimate angel with peak ultimate class strength. Why this high? A being might ask. It is because Moon had deleted any kind of limiter on the new creation of his and made it absolutely loyal to him as he put more souls and holy energy than needed. He even went further than he should, as he even removed his creation's capability to create any sort of emotional bond, as there was only room for loyalty to him. And the pitiful survival instinct that he still kept was weakened to the point that it was 1/4 of the loyalty it had of him. A paranoid creation that he made to prevent any sort of disobedience or defiance against his will. Though he expects some sort of trouble due to what he had done to him, as long as they are absolutely loyal to him, he doesn't care much about the trouble that it entails. Creator. The angel before him said as he kneeled. His eyes were eyeing Moon in a way that made Moon curious. He wanted to ask several questions, like how he feels about him and what he would do in this situation and that situation. But now is not the time, as currently he has other things to do, such as naming him and resting. Your name shall be Thamir, Blade of Judgment. And you would be leading an Inquisitor Legion named Judgment. Moon declared to the angel and also to the seraph. Already giving him a high position despite his recent birth, but still, with how he created it, he wasn't worried about betrayal. And the angel lowered his head in acceptance. Then Moon turned to the seraphs. His creation took more out of me than I expected, so I won't be creating any more. Moon said, while thinking inside his mind that he should not create any more ultimate class angels, or at least should create them every 2 or 3 weeks or so, as he wants to first fill in mid-range combat power before touching higher. As he felt like it, the cost of an ultimate class angel was too much, and for now, he should focus only on high-class angels. As high-class angels won't warrant a wisp of soul from him. Only his holy energy and strong, loyal soul for him to fuse, and also the diagram that was inside his mind. Author's note, if you noticed, I only read the latter part of the novel only once. Also, give me some stone. Pretty PLS, Unyai-chan? Chapter 37. So this is the gate of heaven. A middle-aged man of considerable height and muscle said as he inspected every aspect and detail of the wonder that lay before him. Though calling him middle-aged would be a bit rude to him, considering that he looked like he was just in his early 30s, a side effect of his immense magical ability that slowed down his aging. Though immense relative to the human species, not to the supernatural as a whole. If his talent were to be placed in the grand whole world, it would just be a very top of mid-talent rank, as he had reached ultimate class in his mid-40s. An accomplishment that he was personally quite proud of, but also an inevitable thing, as he was once the heir to the old clan of Loy Eisenberg, a quite big one that had several ultimate class wizards at its peak, and now the clan leader of it. Though, just like how even the proudest of trees would have its moment of weakness, so was the clan of Loy Eisenberg, as it now only had 3 ultimate class, and to make it even bleaker, one of them, the previous clan leader and his father, was extremely old to the point that his power was barely hanging on to the ultimate tier. But because his great aunt, Valoria, a high-tier elven ranger, is still at her peak, which is peak mid-ultimate, he wasn't too worried. After all, the peak period for an elf is between the ages of 200 and 500, and she is only 300 years old. Yes, their clan wasn't entirely a pure human clan, as it was a clan made up of humans, spirits, and elves. Each covers the other's back and protects the other, and this is one of the most important reasons they are still standing strong, even though their enemies and allies they once had have withered away. Alas, they might soon be eliminated also, due to a minor god who resurfaced recently because it sensed some sort of age of great turbulence. It had managed to silently capture several towns and villages around his city, made them worship it, and then slowly recovered its strength. Unfortunately, it had already recovered quite a bit to the point that it is now almost equal to their clan. A deep mistake they had made because almost all of their attention was focused on the 3 factions, as in mostly heaven. Though the entire world was probably the same as them. As the whispers of that one's revival made all pantheons shift their focus and attention, even the Greek, the ones known for their arrogance and pride that were even above the clouds, stopped their bickering as they scoured for any information. So, he came here, to the eye of the storm, all in the hopes of joining heaven as a subordinate to gain protection and authority over the area around their city when heaven eventually won. But just like when there is warmth in one part of the world, In another part, there would always be winter. His grand-aunt and father venomously refused his decision. For they thought that joining in this war would bring them nothing but ruin. But he, Camille Lois, was different, for he saw things from a different perspective. A perception that his grand-aunt and father refused to see due to their rigid view of the world. Heaven will win, that was something Camille was certain of. For he had scoured and bought every piece of information from the Great War in recent years, initially due to mere interest, an insignificant hobby, he would say. But now, due to burning desire and some part greed, a thing that he knew and accepted. He learned of how the biblical God created the entire angel race and how he scavenged the world and used the mighty beasts and monsters' bodies to create sacred gears. Weapon and tool of immense potential and unfathomable destruction. From what he managed to scavenge from during that dark time, other races and quite a few factions considered heaven as the strongest faction, with their mighty seraphs and sacred gears, holy swords as weapons of immeasurable sharpness, millions of fanatics, and an ever-growing angel army as their impenetrable shield. They were considered the strongest, though Muslims followed close behind. Some factions disagreed with it, but most considered this the truth. And now that the biblical God is back, Camille predicts that heaven will regain its peak strength once again. And during the surge of expansion that would follow after they won, he wants a piece of the pie, no, crumbs of the pie, so that their clan could grow to become a minor faction of their own. Representative of the clan of Loyenberg, enter. A calm voice of a high-class angel sounds through the gate as Camille walks in, while the gate of heaven gently opens before him. And when he entered, he saw the paradise that Christians all dreamed of, for it was as beautiful as they all described. With milky white clouds that spanned endlessly to the limit, along with awe-inspiring towers that seemed to support the very clouds themselves, along with the expansive, vast evergreen field of grass and nature as angels went to and from, doing the work that was probably assigned to them with a laugh and excitement visible on their beautiful features. Father would soon make his entrance. He heard one of the angels say this, but because that very angel had gone past him so fast, he hadn't managed to capture the rest of the words. The yellow stone path glowed suddenly as it led him to a massive teleportation formation, which he followed soon after. The air smelled of light rain along with a faint smell of a budding flower, a flower that had just bloomed for the first time since its birth, making Camille unconsciously relax his guard and enjoy the view that was presented to him. The walk wasn't very long, possibly because they don't want anyone wandering around too much. A pity, for he wanted to enjoy it a bit more. And when he stepped into the teleportation formation, it instantly activated and teleported him to another place. A place even deeper into heaven. Fourth heaven. When the light that was surrounding him ceased, he was greeted with a simple open banquet. There were already 3 or 4 people waiting around, minding their own little business. One is even meditating silently on the edge. So he, assuming that he would probably wait a bit before meeting any high-ranking angel, decided to sit on a chair beside an extremely beautiful woman with flowing hair that shifted through a spectrum of colors, who was alone and at a distance from the rest. But halfway through his path, he suddenly changed his path and sat on a chair beside him. While he would have liked to sit around her and converse with her to gauge her or relax around a bit. But the identity of her and the faction that she was representing made him stop that train of thought wholly. For she was a goddess who was waiting while silently sipping a wine. Specifically, the goddess of the rainbow, Iris, messenger of the Greek pantheon. And so, quite possibly following the example of previous people, he joined the silent atmosphere that was unintentionally caused by an extremely strong third party, a goddess, as 3 other representatives, quite possibly having the same feeling, sat in silence. Their back was straight and their head straight as they waited, while occasionally taking a bite out of the fruit and wine that was in front of them, while also constantly keeping their gaze straight to not give any wrong idea to the goddess. Though the fact that there were several high-class angels around them and an ultimate class in the distance made it a bit more bearable. Finally, just when he thought he would have to wait for days, the goddess left, for an angel came and led her to some place. Instantly, the atmosphere relaxed as some of them got up and started conversing around, trying to go through the time while collecting some information with her now gone. Iris, a goddess of rainbows, silently followed the angel as she contemplated how she should go about this. The orders of the god King Zeus and Queen Hera were clear and straightforward. Probe that strict old fellow's intention and inform me, also, do not meddle in his affairs. Zeus, the king of Olympus, said to her. While his wife, Queen Hera, said, try to sense or look for new strong angels. You could sense them through their distinct holy energy, which still has some of his remnant. That should help you determine if he is back at his peak or still licking his wounds. In other words, they ordered her to remain neutral and to determine his intention and his status. An act that she can't do in just one meeting, so she would probably be around here for a bit longer than she wished. But still, she didn't dislike the environment around here much, as it was much better and calmer here than in Olympus. Though only the atmosphere part, because at the very end, She is in another pantheon's realm, a place where she can't rest her heart fully at ease, no matter what. Tick-tick. The silent walk continued as she tried to covertly sense any new angel whose holy energy still had his remnant, for Queen Hera said that she would instantly know when she met them, for they were too distinct and different from all others. Just as expected, she continuously sensed holy energy that was distinctly different from the rest, tainted by something that wasn't divine energy nor holy energy, but a combination of both. When she turned to gaze at a few of them, she felt that she didn't even need to use her divine sense to probe, for they were too distinct and different from the rest. All of the new angels, without exception, were big and covered fully in pristine white armor, moving with a silent but uncanny way. Sometimes their movement would become sharp and deadly as if they were about to finish off an foe, next gentle and sunny. It was as if some other being was trying to fit into a form that was entirely different from their original form. Wrong way. Most of them were mid to late high class, not a clear indication of his recovery, for there was no ultimate tier visible, but the number of them was concerning to say the least. New angels were 2 meters, some even 2.5 meters tall, with glowing eyes that seemed to penetrate all things. However, there was an anomaly even among anomalies, that was, as she briefly sensed, an almost 15-meter-tall angel flying on the edge of her divine sense. Mirage? Hallucination? Or one of his new weapons? She tried to think, but the undeniable vitality and the form that it took unceasingly nagged at the back of her mind, forcing her to put an extra big note inside her mind as she continued on her track. And finally, just as she was beginning to believe that she would reach her goal before meeting anyone, she reached her destination. A massive castle, an extremely big one even by her standards, which was contorted and distorted due to her long existence, stood imposingly before her, as if in mockery of the normal supernatural world's factions' poverty. It was entirely built with precious wares and resources that even small factions couldn't get their hands on, even if they sold everything. Carved and forged into a weapon of war by the greatest craftsman in the world, even better than the god of blacksmiths, fire, forge, and craftsmanship, Hephaestus. A thing that even Hephaestus himself admitted to. But still, she wouldn't let something like this waver her, for she already knew of its existence since it was quite famous during the Great War. Known for its lightning-fast flying and teleportation ability, and its mighty defense that even survived original Beelzebub's full-on blow. A being that, despite personally not liking it, is admittedly a much mightier being than her. Then she entered and was led into a luxurious office. The one not with an ancient or middle-aged theme but with a modern theme. With cubic light at the top and furniture that is sleek and with sharp edges, but excessive amount of decoration touched each part of the office, making the otherwise massive room feel cramped. Though despite the excessive decoration, there was one thing missing. A major thing that any representative would need. A person. Just as she was thinking whether she should sit on a chair and wait, a massive, shadowy being descends outside the room. That being was over 5 meters tall and several meters wide, covered in armor that only let the wearer have a minimum amount of freedom of movement. Unfortunately, due to the fact that the curtain of the room was covered, she couldn't see it with her own eyes. Then a small, worm-like a tendril entered the room by squirming through the small open window. From it, a pure golden woman, almost like an illusion, materializes. "Excuse me." The golden, illusion-like woman said in a normal, loving voice that almost sounded motherly. As if unconditional love and a gentle kindness were part of her very being. "I had other problems that needed my presence. I hope you haven't waited long." Iris smiled lightly in response to her apology, sullen emotion that was caused by a wait that spanned several hours and by the fact that she had only been received by an unknown angel lifted a bit. A thing that she would normally find puzzling and confusing, as despite being part of the ones with better attitude in Greek, but she wasn't any pure or soft being, but didn't notice due to some sort of influence. "Don't worry, I assume heaven has been quite busy considering the event that would probably follow?" Iris asked. The unknown angel didn't shake or even twitch at the question, for it was a simple question that the angel expected, though not this soon and this bluntly, but the weight probably got to the goddess in front of her to make her like this. "Yes, we have, for there would be a great shift in the world soon. Very soon, I might add." "How very soon?" Iris continued asking, the weight that spanned made her hasty and blunter than she would otherwise be, a thing that angel clearly noticed and was disappointed a bit at it. Nevertheless, the fault was on her, so she won't comment about it. "About a day or two, though probably not the one you were expecting," the angel said, with a smile akin to a midday sun, radiant and without falsehood. Slowly and gently shaving off the frustration that had built up in Iris's heart. "A day or two? So fast?" Iris feigned surprise as she subtly requested that she wanted her to tell her more. Something that angel understood very clearly but refused, for she felt that she gave her enough. "I am afraid I can't tell you. Even the words that I spoke were a secret that I shouldn't have indulged," the angel said, with a smile that turned a bit helpless, Yet there was an accommodating gesture in her helplessness that Iris found pleasant. The talk that continued was one of a pleasant atmosphere, with Iris learning a vital piece of information, at least part of it, as a silent apology for the weight that she had to endure. Another thing that she decided to reciprocate was her revealing some non-vital information, like what happened around Greek's area of influence, and the trend and influence that was happening around the area they ruled. Angel accepted her words, then they moved to the true reason for their presence. What the Greek intends to do or wish, and what heaven is willing to accept. King Zeus is willing to stay neutral during the conflict and the event that will ensue, and he is even willing to go out of his way to prevent any of his brothers and subordinates from interfering with a price. Iris said, her tone and voice now happy and more joyous than the initial part of the talk, though normal being wouldn't even notice the slight edge she initially had, as she stated it. Her prideful mind probably thought that heaven would not refuse them, they might even offer a few things as a present. After all, they are helping them, heck, if they pay enough, they might even lend a hand in their conflict. Though only a might, as she wasn't exactly sure of King Zeus's opinion. Angel Dominion, what a foolish child. Dominion thought as she observed the child wearing a fake crown of a goddess in front of her. From the furthest edge of her hair to the edges of her toes, there was nothing about her that was godly. Not even the slightest bit. Her power, unworthy her potential and talent are weak, with no future for growth, not even the slightest bit, even by the brightest estimation. Her mind, a child's one with no grit nor will, and is easily volatile and has pride that someone of her stature shouldn't have. Truthfully, Dominion didn't make her wait this long because she was busy. No, she was curious and was using the excuse of assessing and evaluating to see what a being who called herself a goddess was like. To see what she was like, to see what she was capable of. And if she would be capable of unraveling the hint that the angel who received her gave. Which, by the fact that she waited vainly for several hours, failed. Dominion didn't originally want to do this, for it was a matter of high importance, yet the voice that was calling from the back of her neck just refused to cease, and the dangling curiosity that was placed in front of her was just too appetizing. So she, after an hour of contemplation, decided to indulge her desires, though not before informing Thamir, her only true elder brother. And she was severely disappointed, to say the least. There wasn't even a shadow, or even a remnant of what his father was in her. There was nothing in her that was of value besides her strength, which was while stronger than hers. It was weak in the greater scheme of things and wasn't even a constant one. If she were in Greece, specifically Olympus, she would be quite strong, but in here, she was just an ordinary mid-ultimate being. One who has a limited amount of training and experience, to say the least. But she wouldn't say the thought that swirled in her mind outright either by action or words, as that would be something only a blind fool would do. No, instead, she would entertain her and play with her. Which, judging by how she is acting, shouldn't be that much difficult of a task. Chapter 38. What price are we talking about? Dominion asked, her voice akin to a gentle echo that was mind-crafted into existence yet reaching every corner of the room. An uncertain voice came out of the goddess's mouth. Looking a bit stumped and confused at how fast they transitioned to the talk of payment. But in the end, she wasn't a little girl, so just a second of confusion lingered before dissipating. I do not mean to be rude, but I don't think you have enough authority, she said, causing the somewhat pleasant atmosphere to come to a grinding halt. Yet, it wasn't because of Dominion's emotion, because she felt neither anger nor anger towards Iris for the words that she spoke, for she was above such petty emotions. Even if she wasn't, the information that she already had would have removed those emotions. She knew that the faction that woman belonged to, specifically Greek mythology, was a place where ignorance and stupidity infested the deepest root. One of the main gods of Olympus, Ares, god of war, is an ignorant and foolish brute who severely dislikes tactics and deception, to the point that despite his long existence, his strategic knowledge is akin to that of a mortal soldier. A major cause of his failures and humiliation that he endured throughout his whole life. Diomedes, a mortal man, severely wounded him due to his brutishness and carelessness. No gods take battle advice from him, for he would only say, attack harder and attack faster. If they fail, he would say they are too weak. Athena was better than him in every possible way except his strength, which was the only indication and the reason he is still one of the great gods. Though despite his failures, in the end, his love and passion for slaughter and ruin made him strong and mighty enough to stand up and fight for Olympus in times of need. On the other hand, Aphrodite, the goddess of love, lust, beauty, pleasure, passion, and procreation, was an utter waste of space according to Dominion's own personal opinion. She can't fight, she can't smith, and she can't even create a worthy battle creature that they could use despite her concepts. She can't gather intelligence or do any specific tasks decently, though by mortal standards, she would be capable, but by the supernatural world standards, specifically the highest tier supernatural standards? No, Not even by a distant gust of wind. She only sleeps around like a harlot, tarnishing their faction's name further and further. According to Dominion-gathered intelligence, she knows that Aphrodite has slept with almost every race in the whole wide world, be it centaur, elf, orc, or even goblin. Dominion won't put it past her that the goddess probably slept with mindless animals. Thinking of sex fiends, Dominion couldn't forget Zeus, the male equivalent of Aphrodite, a man whose sexual urges easily bypass race limitations. As he even raped a considerable number of women in his animal form, sometimes a bull, sometimes even a swan. Dominion just couldn't understand how they could be so flawed. Nonetheless, Dominion thought as she focused her attention on Iris. Please, do not worry. For this association, I was granted a great amount of authority. Dominion said as she willed her real body, the one that was still outside, to flare her own holy energy. Instantly, the shadow of the creature who was still outside subtly shifts and grows the slightest bit bigger in the eyes of Iris. Boom! With a blowing of wind and flickering of lights, a peak ultimate tier being's energy reserve blows apart the curtain, barely concealing the creature that stood outside. The decoration that adorned the room shook, and some fell as Iris's hair blew in the wind that was created. Iris's eyes widened, and her mouth parted the slightest bit before closing again, possibly thinking that she had underestimated the angel that was in front of her, Dominion. And that the being who stood in front of her was not one to be underestimated. A false assumption, Dominion thinks. While Dominion does have an energy reserve at a peak ultimate tier, it is due to her massive body and enlarged energy accommodating capability that her father granted. He didn't grant her any sort of effective combat capability to fully utilize it. Though he did grant her the capability of enhancing and boosting other beings, influencing the minds of beings to change their decisions or blunt certain aspects of them, and a great acting capability. But Iris doesn't know that, and Dominion doesn't plan on revealing it to her. I see. Iris spoke as she gazed at Dominion with a new glint. A glint that wasn't previously there and appeared when she revealed her supposed might. Truly a little child. Dominion thinks as she waits for the request to reveal itself. King Zeus doesn't need or desire something in particular. If you wish, it could be high-grade magical ores, weapons, knowledge, or a sacred gear. Iris spoke. Dominion raised her eyebrow in surprise at her bravery or foolishness in mentioning something as precious as sacred gear with so little care. Another thing that Iris notices as she instantly corrects herself. Not the whole sacred gear itself nor high-ranking ones, just the chance for a person we wish to be granted a decent sacred gear until his or her eventual death. Dominion muttered, a gesture of confirmation. Though that does sound appealing, unfortunately, it is unnecessary. Only the promise of non-interference from God Zeus would be appreciated. Dominion said. How so? Iris questioned Dominion the next second, her voice confused and slightly rushed. Dominion slightly shifted and moved her body in a way that would represent a human's confidence and pride that almost seemed overflowing. A deliberate gesture that Dominion made. In my personal opinion, I feel no need for us to go to such lengths. Iris's body shifts, and a slight frown adorns her beautiful face as a shade covers her face. Length? She spoke and didn't say anything more. Dominion, with a learned human's calm and silent confidence gesture, continued the talk. Though we appreciate the gesture and wouldn't forget it, she said. Dominion watched as the goddess in front of her raised her gaze to meet hers and started locking gazes with her created illusion, her mind no doubt whirling and trying to find any meaning in her action. Though if Dominion could give tips to the goddess in front of her, it would be to look at the action and interest of heaven instead of meaning and words. For she was affected by a simple strategy that humans called the art of strategic devaluation. From the very beginning, when she first entered heaven, Dominion started this tactic, originally to show a strong front to make her hesitate from doing anything drastic, now used to undervalue the promise of full non-interference. She subtly and silently showed many of her brothers, most of them high class, to show that her father had started creating them and that the number that was created was many, to say the least. Not any of her ultimate class brothers, of course, because the number was very few due to the strength that her father currently recovered, so she removed most of her ultimate class brothers wholly to make her question if they were hiding them. And what else are they hiding? And the weight that the goddess in front of her had to endure also had some part in her less than perfect state of mind. The state of mind that Dominion wanted for her future enemies. Yes, future enemies, not neutral bystanders nor possible allies, only future enemies, for she was sure that they would one day fight and that she would one day kill her for wearing the crown of a god despite her meager capability and pathetic mindset. Then, after that long wait, she very, very subtly used her ability, endless devotion, to confuse and delude her mind while also using the illusionary human's body language of both mouth and movement to confirm her guess of heaven, specifically her father having fully recovered, or at least close to recovering. Now, in the eyes of the goddess before her, the value of the promise of full non-interference had diminished greatly. For she now believes that angels and the heavens had already recovered to such an extent that their involvement in the war would be highly unlikely, even without a formal pact. Thus, the promise had become little more than empty words. A symbolic gesture, if you will. Dominion then moved to the next part of her plan of bait and switch. She, in the conversation that soon followed, subtly and silently baited that heaven is willing to become a close ally of the Greeks and help them with their diminishing faith, in other words, their diminished strength, which was caused by humans' technological advancement that wasn't guided and supervised by any competent entity, or any, for that matter. And that seemed to get the attention of Iris, the goddess who sat in front of her, as her attention and the focus that she paid had increased, and the number of words that were being exchanged increased in number. The number of times Iris asked her about what would happen and their plan increased, yet Dominion was careful not to ever say anything that would one day work against her father by not declaring anything or refuting her as she led her on. And for reasons that were unknown to her, it worked better than expected, making Dominion question the value that God places in faith and devotion. And to also be more disappointed and disgusted by the fact that God, of all beings, needed faith to keep their strength from diminishing due to the absence and disappearance of the primordial essence. Dominion, I will bring this offer to King Zeus myself. Iris said, quite possibly realizing that Dominion was leading her on and that her wanting any definite answer was futile, but willing to pay for devotees that they gave. Heck, if King Zeus was unwilling to make this trade, Iris didn't mind using the treasures and her own assistance in the war to gain a few churches of her own. After all, even her strength had diminished quite a bit compared to her ancient past. Why not build a few churches of her own? A being might ask, and Iris would open her mouth and say even if she did not mention the required skills to create and maintain the church, other races, especially those who didn't want to see God's back in their full capability, would not give her any chance. That's not mentioning what tricks other gods would do to her church. Maybe they will bless her followers with bad luck and wish for their lives to be filled with misfortune and poverty. And if heaven, now one of the strongest factions in the world, did this in their own territory, other factions wouldn't dare do something they would do to her. After all, the biblical God isn't known for his mercy or kindness towards those who slight him. Even if some ignorant, foolish beings had attacked his church, his zealot devotees and angels would make sure that the beings who attacked, along with their families, would be buried and burned at the stake. If she remembers correctly, she knew he once said it in the ancient past. Only by the shedding of the sinner's blood shall the blasphemy they have wrought be cleansed. Author's note, the reason other races didn't attack the church of the biblical God while he was down is because he was deemed dead, and the existence of the church would not affect any god, so they let the hornet's nest that is the church of the biblical God be. After all, who would be willing to be stung and poisoned to death for no great reason? Though there were a few beings who did try to destroy it, the church and heaven finished them off. Dominion now finally shifts to her last tactic of appealing to shared values, by weaving a faint string of interest to tie them to their chariot of war. After all, who would be willing to help them get zealots and more divine energy correspondingly if there is no heaven? Though this plan of hers would be slow, with multiple visits to Greece and connections that needed to be woven, for the day, what she had done was enough. Now only the finishing touches are needed. Which are some little things like what would be deemed interfering and in which territory do they not want the war to reach, etc. Which took a bit longer than she expected, but after an hour, they finished and parted ways. For Iris, it would probably not be long before she came here again. Until then, Dominion would be waiting. Patiently and calmly. After all, haste only makes waste, and Dominion didn't want anything to become waste. Thamur sat waiting. His pure white armor fully covered every inch of his features as he silently read a history book. And simply one that a normal priest or nun would learn during their training. It is a good thing to give thanks unto the Lord and to sing praises unto thy name, O Most High, to show forth thy loving kindness in the morning and thy faithfulness every sentence wove. He didn't read this because it was of interest to him or would aid him. Simply because he was trying to be more thorough in his first mission. A perfectionist part of him wanted to do every possible thing to decrease the chances of failure, no matter how small it was. Brother Thamur, everything is set. One of his brothers, a 2-meter-tall, peak high-class angel, spoke from beside him. Thamur closed the book that he was reading and got up from his chair. Chair groaned and let out a relieved hum in sync with his moment as it grew almost an inch after he parted. Then he silently got out of the house that he was in and looked at the humongous chapel in the distance. Yes, a chapel. For he wasn't here to cleanse the filth that was devils and falls that filled the world. No, he was here to cut off the tumor that grew from the church. An infested, rotting part that had gone unchecked for far too long. In other words, he is in the Vatican, Earth's representative of heaven. Several of his younger brothers, who were also in the ultimate tier, are scattered around each important region to oversee the development around the world, to make sure everything proceeds according to his will. And after they cleansed off each section, they would report to the commander of this mission, Uriel, the Flame of God. A mighty angel of colossal strength and equally monstrous capability, Thamur would admit, but for reasons unknown to him, he didn't want him to be the commander. For some small part of him saw himself as the only being worthy of kneeling under his creator's feet. But the other part of him, the one that was utterly loyal to his father and his cause, madly screamed and tore open those thoughts to smithereens until they were nothing but an afterthought. The humid air of the outside, along with the gentle wind that follows along, rustles his clothes and gently wraps around his neck as it blows. What a beautiful sight it once was. Thamur mutters as his mind wanders to the past when he was once a feeble human, meaninglessly gazing at this very location, gazing at the chapel for hours on end, and then wandering through the land thereafter, seeking witches to hunt down and burn at the stake. No, he wouldn't call it an utterly meaningless action, far from it. The action he had done and the thing he had done as a human, no, as humans, had helped his father and made heaven a bit better than it would have been without him. It's just that it was an ineffective effort, an effort that, no matter how many times he had done it, would have brought nothing, nor helped his father, nor relieved him of the torment he had to endure for centuries. When he was a human, he should have been scouring the land, looking for any signs or traces of him. But Thamur shook his head as he waved off the fog of confusion that once again visited his mind. Things like this had happened quite frequently after his birth, but now, they had considerably reduced in number. And he expects it to disappear in a few months. Thamur raised his hand and shot a massive golden fireball towards the sky as he commanded his brothers to begin the purge. Yes, a purge, not an assault nor an attack, a pure purge. Because there is nothing that could even raise their weapon against them in this city. For his father had already captured several key targets, the ones that the church would severely suffer without, and reinforced their loyalty. Silently and covertly. Though through it all, he saw two seraphim, specifically Gabriel and Raphael, wearing an emotion that is almost borderline heresy on their faces. A fact that he remembered deeply in his heart.